Chapter 4454. Little bastard, give up and let me capture you. Otherwise, you will die. Meow Meow gloomily looked down at Zhuowen. The killing intent in his eyes was not concealed at all. Zhuowen remained calm. He could feel Moyan Wushang's body trembling. He turned his head and smiled at her. Wushang, don't worry. Don't worry. With me around, nothing will happen to you. No one will be able to hurt you. Moyan Wushang looked at Zhuowen silently. Suddenly, she smiled and nodded her head. He was still the same person as before. No matter what kind of difficulties you faced, he would always be able to help you. She naturally chose to believe in him. Little bastard, how dare you ignore me? You are courting death. Meow Meow's eyes were as cold as a knife. He formed a palm with his right hand and slammed it down. Boom! A vast and unparalleled aura enveloped an area of several hundred miles like countless streams of water vapor. In an instant, the area within hundreds of miles was completely sealed off by this terrifying aura, forming a sealed space. Moyan Wushang's body trembled. She suddenly felt that her body was bound by a strange power. She stood rooted to the ground, unable to move at all. It was too strong. It was much stronger than the ancient starlight. Was this the power of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth? Moyan Wushang was filled with despair. However, Zhuowen remained calm. As the terrifying power of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth extended towards him, he flipped his right hand gently. A sparkling and translucent crystal ball appeared in his palm. Upon closer inspection, the shape of the crystal ball looked like an eyeball. The pupil and the white of the eye were separated. It was very lifelike, as though it was a living eyeball. Out of the void, Meow Meow naturally saw the eyeball-like crystal ball in Zhuowen's palm. His face instantly turned gloomy. Ka ka ka. The moment the eye of the void was activated, the space around Zhuowen and Moyan Wushang shattered. An unknown force wrapped around them and dragged them into the depths of the shattered space. Su Jiaying, stop them. Meow Meow suddenly clenched his right fist, causing the space within a few hundred miles of him to crumble. However, he knew that Zhuowen and Moyan Wushang had used the eyes of the void to escape. Therefore, he immediately shouted at Su Jiaying, who was beside him. Su Jiaying's eyes flashed. The moment Meow Meow reminded him, he tapped the air with his right hand. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, the void in front of Su Jiaying cracked open with a huge gully. The ravine in the void grew longer and longer, and it spread faster and faster. In the blink of an eye, it streaked across the northwestern horizon of Void Inferno Divine City. In the void more than 10 miles away from the profound sacred pavilion, a gully split open as some kind of mysterious force exploded, and two figures were forced out. Pucci. Zhuowen groaned as blood flowed from his mouth and nose. His body was surrounded by layers of spiritual sword intent, and within it, the Grand Imperial Seal was emitting a dazzling golden light. The moment Su Jiaying made his move, he immediately felt a sense of danger. Therefore, he took out the Grand Imperial Seal and spiritual sword intent. The spiritual sword intent surrounding Zhuowen suddenly exploded, unable to withstand the power of Su Jiaying's finger. The difference is too great. This lad can't possibly be a match for the two patriarchs. The three profound sacred elders looked at the terrifying gullies in the sky, and their respect for the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth grew. Give up. Su Jiaying's face was cold. He gently swiped the sword with his right hand, and the surrounding laws of heaven and earth obeyed his command, turning into spears of laws that pierced through the air toward Zhuowen and Moyan Wushang. Zhuowen took a deep breath. This move was too powerful, and he couldn't take it. However, he didn't panic, because he now had a simplified version of the Chariot of Chariot. Zhuowen was confident that Su Jiaying and Meow Meow would not be able to catch up to him with the mystical chariot. When Zhuowen was about to bring out the Chariot of Chariots, he seemed to have sensed something and looked at the void to his left. There stood a figure with his hands behind his back. Bang, bang, bang. An invisible barrier appeared in front of Zhuowen, blocking the law spears one after another. Su Jiaying's eyes narrowed. He and Meow Meow looked at the space to the left of Zhuan at the same time. Naturally, they also saw the figure standing there. This was a white-haired old man in a long robe. He stood in the air, and his eyes were powerful and sharp as if they contained lightning. Elder Anshi, the moment he saw the old man, Zhuan's pupils shrank, and he couldn't help but take a deep breath. He naturally knew this old man. He was Old Man Anshi, who was in charge of the Void Yama Divine ranking. Back then, when he challenged the Void Yama Divine list, it was this old man who arranged it for him. At that time, he felt that this old man was not ordinary, but he didn't expect him to be this strong. Su Jiaying was an early-stage lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert. Since Old Man Anshi could easily block his attack, he must be at least an early-stage lawful embodiment of heaven and earth cultivator. Su Jiaying and Meow Meow were both confused and fearful. Anshi, what do you mean by this? Su Jiaying asked, his voice as cold as a venomous snake. He stared coldly at Old Man Anshi. Old Man Anshi walked slowly in the air, a faint smile on his lips. Both of you, this young friend has some fate with me. So, for my sake, can you let him go? Meow Meow said darkly. Anshi, you'd better not interfere. This kid has killed too many people from both of our clans. If our two great clans were to swallow this insult, then where would our prestige be? Old Man Anshi took another step forward, not far from Zhuan. He continued, both of you, you'd better leave now, because I've already informed the King of Hell. I remember that the King of Hell once issued a notice that you are not allowed to attack Xiaoyu in the Divine City. Now, you've openly disobeyed the orders of the Imperial Court. Are you looking down on the Void Yama? Su Jiaying and Meow Meow were both shocked. This old man Anshi was truly sinister. He'd secretly reported this to the King of Hell. They'd surrounded Zhuan without permission, which was against the King of Hell's orders. Their original plan was to act first and report later. As long as they killed Zhuan as soon as possible, the King of Hell wouldn't make things difficult for their clans for a dead person. Now that Zhuan hadn't died and had attracted the attention of Old Man Anshi and the King of Hell, they were truly in the wrong. While they were hesitating, a blazing golden light came from the center of Su Yan Divine City. A divine warship flew over, and a middle-aged man stood on the deck, his entire body glowing with golden light. Behind the middle-aged man, there was an army of elite cultivators, all of them charging over with an aggressive aura. The King of Hell, Gold Prodigy Lord, Su Jiaying and Meow Meow looked over, their faces darkening. Chapter 4455. The Gold Lord's eyes shone with a golden light, as if they were two suns swallowing and spitting out dazzling light. He clasped his hands behind his back and stood on the deck of the divine warship, looking coldly at Meow Meow and Su Jiaying. Whoosh! The divine warship was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it was in the air not far from Zhuan. Xiaoyu, we meet again. The Gold Lord's eyes first landed on Zhuan, and he smiled as he spoke softly. Zhuan cupped his hands at the Gold Lord and heaved a sigh of relief. From where the Gold Lord was standing, it was obvious that the Gold Lord was on his side. The Gold Lord then looked at Elder Anshi, who was on his left. Fear flashed in his eyes, and he nodded at him as a form of greeting. Elder Anshi smiled and said, Gold Lord, the King of Hell has announced that no forces in Su Yan City are allowed to lay a hand on Xiaoyu. But now, little friend Zhua is about to be murdered by a scoundrel, yet you're late. They say that the King of Hell is a man of his word, but now it seems that he doesn't live up to his reputation. The Gold Lord's eyes turned cold. The King of Hell has indeed not handled this matter well. But now that we know, we will naturally stand up for Xiaoyu. We will not let any harm come to him. With that, the Gold Lord's gaze finally landed on Meow Meow and Su Jiaying. His eyes shone with a sharp, cold light. Family heads, don't you think that you've gone too far? The King of Hell has clearly prohibited this, but you've knowingly broken the law. Are you looking down on us, the King of Hell? The Gold Lord's eyes were like the sun, and his entire body emitted a dazzling divine light. He was like a god that had descended to the mortal world. He spoke slowly, as if he was spitting out a supreme incantation. It was loud and clear like a bell, enlightening even the deaf. Zhuan's expression turned serious. The Gold Lord was indeed one of the three lords of the King of Hell. Just the aura emanating from his body was comparable to that of early-stage lawful embodiment of heaven and earth experts like Mi Hao Miao and Su Jiaying. Mi Hao Miao and Su Jiaying looked gloomy. They exchanged glances and saw helplessness in each other's eyes. They had planned this for a long time and thought that the plan would be carried out smoothly, but they didn't expect that it would be ruined midway. Gold Lord, you're wrong. This brat has killed so many people from our two great clans. His debt of blood is endless. If we swallow this insult, won't people think that we're easy to bully? From our point of view, we didn't do anything wrong, and the King of Hell doesn't need to protect him. He's not qualified at all. Mei Hao Miao furrowed his brows and spoke in an unconvinced tone. The Gold Lord raised his eyebrows, but did not answer. Instead, he waved his right sleeve in the air. A crack appeared in the air in front of him, and in the depths of the crack, a blazing golden light surged. The source of the golden light was a huge scroll that was about 10 feet long. On the surface of the scroll, there were auspicious beasts emitting a noble golden light. King of Hell's decree. Mi Hao Miao and Su Jiaying's eyes narrowed as they looked at the huge scroll in disbelief. King of Hell's decree only appeared once in 1,000 years. Once it appeared, it meant that something big was about to happen. Now that the Gold Lord had taken out King of Hell's decree, the two of them had a bad feeling. The golden scroll floated in the air and slowly opened. On the surface of the scroll, huge golden words appeared. Each word was like an incantation. Zhuan looked at the scroll, and a thunderous boom sounded in his mind. The words on the decree drilled into his soul and imprinted in the depths of his heart. Under King of Hell's decree, Zhuan killed the two aristocratic families purely in self-defense. He is not guilty. Mi Hao Miao, Su Jiaying, if the two of you continue to pursue Zhuan, the King of Hell will represent King of Hells will to intervene and show no mercy. The Gold Lord stood under the decree, his golden gaze still fixed on Mi Hao Miao and Su Jiaying. The two of you, King of Hell has instructed me to come here to resolve the misunderstanding from before. I hope that the two of you can give face to the King of Hell and not do anything too outrageous. The Gold Lord said calmly. Mi Hao Miao and Su Jiaying's eyes narrowed, and their hearts sank to the bottom. King of Hell was actually stepping in for a lowly, cosmic manifestation. The two of them could not understand. King of Hell's decree. Of course, we would not dare to go against it. Su Jiaying said calmly. Although Mi Hao Miao was extremely unwilling, he knew that he could only lower his head for now. Right? To show your sincerity, the two of you still have to swear a heavenly oath. This is King's request. The Gold Lord put away the decree and stared at the two patriarchs with bright eyes. Mi Hao Miao and Su Jiaying frowned. After a moment of hesitation, they could not harden their hearts and refuse. The King of Hell was too powerful. They could not offend the King of Hell for a mere Zhuan. However, what they did not understand was, what ability did Zhua have to be able to receive such preferential treatment from the virtual King of Hell? Gold Lord, don't worry. In the future, Mi Hao Miao and I will not personally attack Zhuan unless he harms the interests of our two aristocratic families. I think you should be satisfied, Su Jiaying said calmly, her tone filled with hostility and coldness. After he finished speaking, he led the cultivator army that followed him and left with a flick of his sleeves. Even though Mi Hao Miao was unwilling, he knew that the outcome was set. He looked coldly at Zhuan and left with his army. After the two patriarchs left, Zhuan cupped his hands at the Gold Lord and said, Lord Gold Lord, thank you for your help. The Gold Glorious Lord smiled and said, Little friend Zhua, you flatter me. I'm here on my king's orders. In the future, you don't have to worry about Mi Hao Miao and Su Jiaying shamelessly attacking you. I have done my job, so I will take my leave now. The Gold Lord came and left in a hurry. He did not stay for long. However, When Gold Lord left, he glanced at Elder Anshi from time to time, his eyes filled with vigilance. After the Gold Lord left, Elder Anshi came to Zhuowen with a smile and looked him up and down. "Should I call you Zhuowen or Zhuowen?" Elder Anshi said with a smile. "Zhuowen is my alias. My real name is Zhuowen. Senior, you can call me Zhuowen. Many thanks to Senior for saving me just now. This Zhuo will definitely remember this favor." Zhuowen bowed again. Old man Anshi supported Zhuowen and said with a smile, "Even if I don't do anything, you'll be fine. Your disguise was perfect, but this old man could see with a single glance that you did not feel any despair when facing Su Jiaying and Mi Hao Miao. This means that you must have some kind of trump card that allows you to be unafraid of lawful embodiment of heaven and earth." Zhuo Wen's eyes narrowed when he heard this, but he quickly calmed down. Elder Anshi was indeed not simple. His observation skills were so sharp that he could deduce so much from this point alone. Chapter 4456. Little bastard, give up and let me capture you. Otherwise, you will die. Mi Hao Miao gloomily looked down at Zhuowen. The killing intent in his eyes was not concealed at all. Zhuowen remained calm. He could feel Moyan Wushang's body trembling. He turned his head and smiled at her. "Wushang, don't worry. Don't worry. With me around, nothing will happen to you. No one will be able to hurt you." Moyan Wushang looked at Zhuowen silently. Suddenly, she smiled and nodded her head. He was still the same person as before. No matter what kind of difficulties you faced, he would always be able to help you. She naturally chose to believe in him. "Little bastard, how dare you ignore me? You are courting death." Mei Hao Miao's eyes were as cold as a knife. His right hand formed a palm and slammed down from the sky. Boom! A vast and unparalleled aura enveloped an area of several hundred miles like countless streams of water vapor. In an instant, the area within hundreds of miles was completely sealed off by this terrifying aura, forming a sealed space. Moyan Wushang's body trembled. She suddenly felt that her body was bound by a strange power. She stood rooted to the ground, unable to move at all. It was too strong. It was much stronger than the ancient starlight. Was this the power of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth? Moyan Wushang was filled with despair. However, Zhuowen was still calm. The moment the terrifying power of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth spread over, he flipped his right hand. A sparkling and translucent crystal ball appeared in his palm. Upon closer inspection, the shape of the crystal ball looked like an eyeball. The pupil and the white of the eyeball were separated. It was very lifelike, as though it was a living eyeball. Out of the void, Mei Hao Miao naturally saw the eyeball-like crystal ball in Zhuowen's palm. His face instantly turned gloomy. Ka ka ka. The moment the eye of the void was activated, the space around Zhuowen and Moyan Wushang shattered. An unknown force wrapped around them and dragged them into the depths of the shattered space. Su Jiaying, stop them! Mei Hao Miao suddenly clenched his right fist, and the space within a few hundred miles of him started to crack. However, he knew that Zhuowen and Moyan Wushang had used the eyes of the void to escape. Therefore, he immediately shouted at Su Jiaying, who was beside him. Su Jiaying's eyes flashed. The moment Mi Hao Miao reminded him, he tapped the air with his right hand. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, the void in front of Su Jiaying cracked open with a huge gully. The ravine in the void grew longer and longer as it spread faster and faster. In the blink of an eye, it streaked across the horizon of the northwestern region of Void Inferno Divine City. In the void more than 10 miles away from the profound sacred pavilion, a gully split open as some kind of mysterious force exploded, and two figures were forced out. Pucci. Zhuowen groaned as blood flowed from his mouth and nose. His body was surrounded by layers of spiritual sword intent, and within it, the Grand Imperial Seal glowed with a dazzling golden light. The moment Su Jiaying made his move, he immediately felt a sense of danger. Therefore, he took out the Grand Imperial Seal and spiritual sword intent. The spiritual sword intent surrounding Zhuowen suddenly exploded, unable to withstand the power of Su Jiaying's finger. The difference is too great. This lad is no match for the two great family heads. The three profound, sacred elders looked at the terrifying gullies in the sky, and their respect for the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth grew. Give up. Su Jiaying's face was cold. He waved his right hand lightly, and the surrounding laws of heaven and earth obeyed his command. They turned into spears of laws that pierced through the air toward Zhuowen and Moyan Wushang. Zhuowen took a deep breath. This move was too powerful, and he couldn't take it. However, he didn't panic because he now had a simplified version of the Chariot of Chariot. Zhuowen was confident that Su Jiaying and Mi Hao Miao would not be able to catch up to him with a mystical chariot. When Zhuowen was about to bring out the Chariot of Chariots, he seemed to have sensed something and looked at the void to his left. There stood a figure with his hands behind his back. Bang, bang, bang. An invisible barrier appeared in front of Zhuowen, blocking the law spears one after another. Su Jiaying's eyes narrowed. He and Mi Hao Miao looked at the space to the left of Zhuowen at the same time. Naturally, they also saw the figure standing there. This was a white-haired old man in a long robe. He stood in the air, and his eyes were powerful and sharp as if they contained lightning. Elder Anshi, the moment he saw the old man, Zhuowen's pupils shrank, and he couldn't help but take a deep breath. He naturally knew this old man. He was Old Man Anshi, who was in charge of the Void Yama Divine ranking. Back then, when he challenged the Void Yama Divine list, it was this old man who arranged it for him. At that time, he felt that this old man was not ordinary, but he didn't expect him to be this strong. Su Jiaying was an early-stage lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert. Since Old Man Anshi could easily block his attack, he must be at least an early-stage lawful embodiment of heaven and earth cultivator. Su Jiaying and Mi Hao Miao were both confused and fearful. Anshi, what do you mean by this? Su Jiaying asked, his voice as cold as a venomous snake. He stared coldly at Old Man Anshi. Old Man Anshi walked slowly in the air, a faint smile on his lips. Both of you, this young friend has some fate with me. So, for my sake, can you let him go? Mi Hao Miao said darkly. Anshi, you'd better not interfere. This kid has killed too many people from both of our clans. If our two great clans were to swallow this insult, then where would our prestige be? Old Man Anshi took another step forward, not far from Zhuowen. He continued, both of you, you'd better leave now, because I've already informed the King of Hell. I remember that the King of Hell sent out a notice that you're not allowed to attack Shuo without permission in the Divine City. Now, you've openly disobeyed the orders of the Imperial Court. Are you looking down on the Void Yama? Su Jiaying and Mi Hao Miao were both shocked. This old man Anshi was truly sinister. He'd secretly reported this to the King of Hell. They'd surrounded Zhuowen without permission, which was against the King of Hell's orders. Their original plan was to act first and report later. As long as they killed Zhuowen as soon as possible, the King of Hell wouldn't make things difficult for them for a dead person. Now that Zhuowen hadn't died and had attracted the attention of Old Man Anshi and the King of Hell, they were truly in the wrong. While they were hesitating, a blazing golden light came from the center of Su Yin Divine City. A divine warship flew over, and a middle-aged man stood on the deck, his entire body glowing with golden light. Behind the middle-aged man, there was an army of elite cultivators, all of them charging over with an aggressive aura. The King of Hell, Gold Glorious Lord, Su Jiaying and Mi Hao Miao looked over, their faces darkening. Bird Book Network. Chapter 4457. Crack. Zhuowen exerted force with his right hand, and the jade slip in his palm was crushed into powder. He looked up at Elder Anshi and said, Elder, this thing is very important. Are you sure you want me to take it? Aren't you afraid that I'll be greedy and fight for it? Elder Anshi smiled and said, Actually, I'm quite sure about you. But just in case, I'll leave a special mark on you. If you really do something inappropriate, the mark will alert me and pinpoint your location. Zhuowen nodded. Elder Anshi's action was reasonable. The old man put his right index finger and middle finger together and placed them on Zhuo Wen's right arm. A scorching sensation came from Zhuo Wen's right arm. A fiery red mark appeared on his right arm. The shape of the mark was like a pattern of 7 tadpoles, which formed an oval ring. This mark is not only a mark to monitor and track you, but also a mark to show that you are my man. As long as you reach the designated location and show the mark, someone will give it to you. Elder Anshi withdrew his right hand and said solemnly, "Take this Eye of the Void. If you really encounter a dangerous situation, you can also use the Eye of the Void to escape." Elder Anshi seemed to be worried. He took out another eyeball-like hollow eye and handed it to Zhuo. Zhuo didn't refuse. Instead, he generously put it away. Although he had the chariot now, which was more powerful than the hollow eye, he couldn't escape. He couldn't use the hollow eye, but the people around him could. This is the specific route map. I marked the shortcuts and some hidden places. Before you go, you'd better familiarize yourself with the route map. Old Man Anshi took out a scroll with a route drawn on it and handed it to Zhuo, instructing him with a serious face. After that, Elder Anshi and Zhuo discussed some details about the mission. Then Zhuo left with Moyan Wushang. As soon as Zhuo returned to the Xuesheng family, Li Yinglong hurried over. "Young Master Zhuo, are you all right?" Mi Hao Miao and Su Jiaying. These 2 bastards are truly sinister. They actually dare to bully the weak. Truly repulsive. Li Yinglong said angrily. Zhuo felt a slight warmth in his heart and said, "Family Headley, rest assured, I'm fine." In the end, Gold Glorious Lord came and stopped Su Jiaying and Mi Hao Miao. Li Yinglong was startled. Gold Lord? Could it be that he was ordered to come by the virtual King of Hell? Li Yinglong knew very well that the King of Hell had always obeyed orders and would not act on their own accord. Gold Lord would not help Zhuo on his own accord. Yes, the Gold Lord came with the decree of the virtual King of Hell. Zhuo explained the situation in a few words. Of course, Zhuo didn't mention a word about the task that Old Man Anshi had entrusted to him. "I didn't expect that the virtual King of Hell would personally send down a decree." Young Master Zhuo is truly blessed to be able to obtain the help of such a noble person. Li Yinglong smiled and continued to say to Zhuo, "Young Master Zhuo, this Old Man Anshi's identity is not ordinary. You should establish a good relationship with him. This will be of great benefit to you." Zhuo nodded and did not linger on this topic. "This is..." Li Yinglong's gaze fell on Moyan Wushang, who was beside Zhuo, and asked in surprise. "She is my close female friend. When I first came to Su Yin's city, I was mainly looking for her whereabouts." Zhuo said with a smile. "Greetings, Family Headley." Moyan Wushang gracefully bowed to Li Yinglong, elegant and appropriate. Li Yinglong nodded in satisfaction and said with a smile, "Young Master Zhuo is truly blessed." After the greetings, Zhuo and Moyan Wushang returned to the Tianlun Pavilion. "Wushang, this Eye of the Void is for you." In the courtyard, Zhuo passed the Eye of the Void to Moyan Wushang. "No, Zhuo, this Eye of the Void is too precious. It is enough to save my life. I cannot accept it." Moyan Wushang shook her head. She knew that Zhuo would be in great danger if he went to the Zilin realm. How could she accept this life-saving item? Zhuo shook his head and said with a smile, "I have better life-saving means. The Eye of the Void is unnecessary for me. Take it. I said that I will not let you get hurt again." Moyan Wushang looked at Zhuo and saw that his eyes were full of determination. She nodded silently and kept the Eye of the Void. Seeing that Moyan Wushang had accepted the Eye of the Void, Zhuo smiled with relief. He then waved his sleeve and summoned Shi Patian, Xiao He, and Shan Lingyun. "Disciple, why did you suddenly summon us?" Shan Lingyun put her hands on her hips and glanced at Zhuo with some dissatisfaction. She then noticed Moyan Wushang in the room. You are." Shan Lingyun moved in front of Moyan Wushang and looked at him carefully with her big eyes. "Ah, Sister Wushang, long time no see. Zhuo, this brat, finally found you." Xiao He took the lead and jumped onto Wushang's shoulder. She patted the latter's shoulder like an old man. "Xiao He." Moyan Wushang's eyes curved into crescents. He held Xiao He with both hands and looked at her carefully. He smiled and said, "It has indeed been a long time. It's good to see you." Xiaohei's body stiffened and her eyes became wet. She quickly turned around and wiped her eyes. "Yes, it has indeed been a long time. You have suffered all these years." Xiaohei said softly, "You are Moyan Wushang. My disciple often talks about you. His main purpose in entering the 100 domains was to find you." Shan Lingyun moved forward and stretched out her small hand. She said, "I am Shan Lingyun, Zhuowen's teacher in the art of spiritual speech." Moyan Wushang also stretched out his white hand and shook Shan Lingyun's hand. He said, "Nice to meet you. And me, I am Shirpatian. My father is Zhuowen. He is also my master. Sister Wushang, you are really beautiful." Shirpatian ran over and blinked his innocent eyes. He looked at Moyan Wushang without blinking. Zhuowen walked forward and knocked on Shirpotian's head. Then he looked at Moyan Wushang and said, "Shirpatian is the first living creature born in my big world. He was born from heaven and earth." Moyan Wushang smiled and said, "You don't have to explain to me. Xiaohei told me about Shirpatian." Zhuowen scratched his head and felt a little embarrassed. After a series of self-introductions, Moyan Wushang became familiar with Shan Lingyun and the others. "XDW 8-inch Wushang. Do you recognize this item?" Zhuowen flipped his right hand and a 7-colored pagoda floated above his palm. At the top of the pagoda sat a little girl dressed in a rainbow-colored dress. Her little legs were swaying back and forth. Chapter 4458. Your aura. Are you the inheritor of the 7 emotions and 6 desires, Saint Lord? Kaine's bright eyes found Moyan Wushang in front of her. Her face was solemn. The 7 treasures pagoda. Moyan Wushang was surprised. She had received half of the inheritance of the 7 emotions and 6 desires, Saint Lord. Naturally, she knew many things about the Saint Lord. The 7 treasures pagoda was the natal divine weapon of the 7 emotions and 6 desires, Saint Lord. It was extremely powerful. However, as she was not qualified to enter the starlight world of the 7 emotions and 6 desires, Saint Lord, this was the first time she had seen the 7 treasures pagoda. "That's right. Although this is your first time seeing me, you can recognize me. It's really commendable." Kai and I crossed our arms and nodded like an old man. Zhuowen felt Moyan Wushang's puzzled look and said, "I have received the other half of the inheritance and luckily mastered the starlight world of the 7 emotions and 6 desires, Saint Lord." Moyan Wushang was not surprised. She had always thought that Zhuowen was very strong and talented. She had never doubted this. "Wushang, the 7 treasures pagoda is yours from now on. Only you are qualified to inherit the 7 emotions and 6 desires, Saint Lord's inheritance." Zhuowen handed the 7 treasures pagoda to Moyan Wushang. Moyan Wushang was stunned for a moment. She did not expect that Zhuowen would hand over a treasure like the 7 treasures pagoda to her. "You must accept it. I have received another inheritance. This inheritance is not suitable for me. Only you are qualified to inherit it," Zhuowen said seriously. Although I feel that it's too sudden, he has absolute control over the 7 treasures pagoda. Since he gave it to you, you will be my master from now on. Don't worry, I will assist you well." Kaine's face showed some helplessness as she tried to persuade Moyan Wushang. Moyan Wushang was not a pretentious person. She could see that Zhuowen really wanted to give it to her. Next, Zhuowen and Colored Mud removed their master-servant relationship, and Colored Mud completely followed Moyan Wushang. Zhuowen also explained the situation of the 7 emotions, 6 desires, Saint Lord's starlight world to Moyan of Wushang. The 7 emotions, 6 desires, Saint Lord's starlight world is extremely rich in resources, and the energy inside is extremely beneficial to your cultivation. Now, your injuries have not healed. You'd better go to the starlight world to heal first. Zhuowen pondered for a moment and continued. "By the way, I have a friend called Duan Jipeng. He is currently cultivating in the starlight world. After you go in, please send my regards." Moyan Wushang smiled. She stepped forward and gently hugged Zhuowen. "Zhuowen, thank you for doing so much for me. After my injuries are healed, let's go back. I miss Big Sister Qinshui and everyone I know. Moyan Wushang whispered in Zhuowen's ear, gently but firmly. Zhuowen patted Moyan Wushang's shoulder and said, it's a deal. With a flash of seven-colored light, the beauty in front of Zhuowen had already left. Zhuowen's expression became serious again. He sat by the bed and recalled the specific contents of the jade slip that Old Man Anshi had given him today. The item Old Man Anshi had asked him to take was called the Heaven and Earth Furnace. It was a divine artifact at the early fourth heaven of the Eternal Realm. A divine artifact at the level of the Heaven and Earth Furnace was a first-class treasure, even in all the supreme realms. It was enough to make most of the forces jealous. However, Old Man Anshi had given him a very long time to complete this task. He had to complete it within 3 years. Therefore, Zhuowen was not in a hurry now. His current goal was to return to the Zixian realm and lead the reinforcements of the Su Ming family to support the Zixian clan in their crusade against the other 13 higher realms. This was because he had an idea. After the Zixian clan had unified all the higher realms, he planned to secretly develop his forces. The longer he stayed in the 100 outer realms, the more he felt the importance of having a large force behind him. The strength of a single person was indeed too small. The next day, in the hall of the Su Ming family, Zhuowen met Li Yinglong again. Young Master Zhua, the cultivator army of our Su Ming family is ready. Now, they have gathered at the central square. Li Sha, Li Hong, you two take young Master Zhua to have a look. Li Yinglong stood up and said to Zhuowen with a smile. When the group of people arrived at the central square, Zhuowen saw a cultivator army with an imposing aura. The number of this army was not large, about 100 people, but each of them had a vast and unparalleled aura. They were not weaker than the cosmic manifestation realm. In particular, the two commanders at the head of the team were surrounded by dazzling starlight. They were both inverse ancient starlight realm experts. These two are Elder Di and Elder Lu of our Su Ming family. They are both inverse ancient starlight realm experts. With their leadership, they can help the Zixian clan conquer the other 13 higher realms. Li Yinglong pointed to the front of the army. The two commanders at the head of the army were introduced to Zhuowen with a smile. Elder Di was a burly man with a beard, while Elder Lu was an old man with a head full of white hair. The two of them came forward and bowed to Li Yinglong, then cupped their hands to Zhuowen. Lu, indeed, greet young Master Zhua. The two of them spoke in unison. Their expressions were full of reverence. They had heard of Zhuowen's deeds. They knew that the young man in front of them, although his cultivation was lower than theirs, was definitely not weaker than theirs. In fact, he was even stronger. You are too polite, commanders. Zhuowen helped the two of them up and said to Li Yinglong, Family head Li, you are so considerate to send such an elite army. Li Yinglong waved his hand and said, Young Master Zhua, you are too kind. This is what we should do. This army is completely under your command. Your orders are my orders. As he spoke, Li Yinglong pointed to the other side of the square. There, a huge divine ship like a giant beast was parked. Young Master Zhua, the divine ship has been prepared for you. You can take the army and enter the divine ship. Li Yinglong said with a smile. Zhuowen nodded inwardly. Li Yinglong was very methodical and orderly, which was to his liking. The army boarded the deck of the divine ship one after another. Zhuowen was the last to go. Young Master Zhua, we won't be going. We hope that you will be victorious this time. Li Shuo and Li Hong stood at the front of the divine ship and waved goodbye to Zhuowen. Thank you for your kind words. Goodbye. Zhuowen cupped his hands to the two of them. Then, he nodded to Li Yinglong, who was not far away, and commanded the soldiers to set off. Whoosh! The divine ship soared into the sky like a giant beast. It leaped into the depths of the void and quickly disappeared into the distance. While Zhuowen was leading a cultivator army to the Purple Jade Realm, the Purple Jade Realm was in a state of chaos. Wars were happening everywhere. On the other hand, the core area of the Violet Jade Realm, the Violet Jade Saint City, was completely surrounded by an army. Chapter 4459. Zixian's sacred city, in the central hall. Ziyang sat on the main seat of the hall with a solemn expression. In front of the hall, the four saintesses and the other higher-ups stood silently on both sides, not daring to say a word. Ziyuan, how long have we been surrounded? Ziyang rubbed her temples and looked at the saintess, Ziyuan, who was standing at the front. Ziyuan stepped out and said with a worried expression, "My lady, it's already the 20th day. Moreover, the defensive array of our sacred city is almost at its limit. I'm afraid it won't be able to hold on for much longer. Moreover, the 12 grand venerables who surrounded us specially set up a concealment array. We can't send out a request for help at all." Ziyang was completely silent, but her heart was filled with anxiety. 20 days ago, not long after she returned to Zixian's sacred city, the 13 high-grade realms sent troops to surround Zixian's sacred city and wantonly slaughtered people in Zixian's sacred city without any scruples. Female supremacy Ziyang was naturally enraged. She planned to go out and expel these invaders. However, as soon as she went out, she was surrounded by several grand venerables. Only then did she understand that other than the grand venerables of Rand's sacred city and Blackscale sacred city, the other 12 grand venerables were all here. Although Ziyang was strong, she couldn't withstand the attacks of the 12 grand venerables. In the end, she was injured and returned to Zixian's sacred city with heavy injuries. How can they know my movements so accurately? Ziyang's expression was dark. Everything was too coincidental. As soon as she returned to Zixian's sacred city, the 12 grand venerables of Nuwa clan, Luotian clan, and the others came together. Unless there was a traitor in Zixian clan or someone in Suyin Divine City leaked her information. I wonder when Master will come back. I can't hold on much longer. Ziyang couldn't help but think of Zhuowen. She knew very well that as long as Zhuowen returned, he would be able to bring the cultivator army of the Suyu family back. With the help of Zhuowen and the cultivator army of the Suyu family, Zixian clan would be able to escape this dangerous situation. However, she couldn't send out a request for help at all, which made them extremely passive. Rumble. Suddenly, an earth-shattering bang resounded throughout the entire Violet Jade holy city. After that, the main hall was fiercely shaken a few times, and dense cracks appeared in the main hall. Oh no! Female Supreme, sirs. The great city barrier array has been breached, and the allied army has invaded the holy city and begun a massacre. Outside the main hall, a flustered soldier rushed in. His eyes were filled with fear as he shouted. His voice spread throughout the entire main hall. What? How could the great city barrier formation be broken so quickly? Female Venerable Ziyang was shocked and stood up abruptly. Her beautiful eyes were full of shock. Logically speaking, Purple Jade Holy City protecting Grand Array should still be able to hold on for a period of time. Why was it broken now? A mysterious expert appeared on the Allied army side. He took out a formation disc and completely destroyed the defensive formation. The soldier knelt on the ground, trembling as he spoke. Venerable Ziyang took a deep breath, and her eyes suddenly became sharp. She said in a deep voice, "Everyone, listen to my order. Follow me out to meet the enemy. We must hold on. As long as the reinforcements arrive, we will be able to survive this crisis." In the main hall, the eyes of the 4 holy maidens and many higher-ups also became firm. This was a battle of life and death. They could not shrink back. Once they did, they would die. After Venerable Ziyang led everyone out of the main hall, she saw that the entire holy city had become a scene of devastation. In the sky above the holy city, a black mass of cultivator army was like a swarm of locusts passing through, heading towards the core of the holy city. Wherever these cultivator army passed, wantonly destruction was wantonly, and the people were plunged into misery and suffering. In the holy city, many cultivators who lived all year round rose up to resist, but in the end, they all ended up with their bodies and souls destroyed. At this moment, the peaceful holy city had turned into an Azura hell. Everywhere was filled with chaos, blood, and the aura of darkness. Venerable Zi Yang's eyes turned blood red when she saw this scene. These were her people. In the territory she guarded, her people were trampled so wantonly. The anger in her chest burned like a raging fire. Ziyang, you're finally willing to come out. Suddenly, a deafening roar came from the distance. Ziyang looked up and saw several figures quickly coming from the distance. Each of them had a powerful aura and were surrounded by dazzling starlight. Lin Yu of the Jade Feather Clan, Lan Dao of the Blue Qian Clan, Mo Yu of the LV Ran Clan, Xian Ku of the Shuanbo Clan. Zi Yang's face was gloomy. There were a total of 4 figures, all of whom were the great sovereigns of the major clans in the higher realms, especially Lin Yu and Lan Dao, both of whom were extremely close to the late stage of the ancient Starlight Realm. Together with Mo Yu and Xian Ku, the 4 of them were enough to put Ziyang into a passive situation. After all, Ziyang had been seriously injured by the great sovereigns before, and her strength had declined. Ziyang sighed softly and said to Ziyuan, the great saintess beside him, our Zishuan clan's destiny has come to an end. You take the rest of the people back to the temple and activate the last 3rd heavens of eternal realm formation. There's still a secret escape path in the main hall. You all should flee quickly. At the very least, we can't let the Zishuan clan be exterminated. Leave behind some of your bloodline and wait for the future to come back. After Ziyang finished speaking, she waved her sleeve and pushed Ziyuan and the others into the temple without waiting for them to refuse. Then, she took out her ancient star constellation and rushed towards Lin Yu and the others. Boom! The 5 of them fought together. 5 ancient star constellations collided in the void, erupting with a terrifying aura. It was as though the entire sky was about to be torn apart. As expected of the leader of the higher realms, even though she's seriously injured, she still has such terrifying combat strength. Lin Yu, Lan Dao, and the others were shocked as they fought. Even though the 4 of them joined forces, they couldn't gain any advantage over Ziyang. They were even at a disadvantage. The 4 of you, we're here to help you. Suddenly, another 4 people flew over from another direction. The one in the lead was the great sovereign of the Luoxin clan, Luoya. Following behind Luoya was the great sovereign of the Nuo clan, Huangju, and the other 2 great sovereigns from the higher realms. Boom, boom, boom. The moment Luoya and the other 3 joined in, the situation of the battle changed drastically. Ziyang, who originally had the upper hand, was completely suppressed. She was forced to retreat. As for her ancient star constellation, it was surrounded by 8 other ancient star constellations. It let out a roar of unwillingness and anger. Its huge body that was shining with starlight was torn apart and became transparent. Pucci. Ziyang felt a sweetness in her mouth as she spat out a mouthful of blood. Blood also flowed out from her eyes, ears, and nose. She looked miserable and malevolent. Ziyang, you're not our match. It's better for you to surrender. That way, you might be able to survive. Luoya had her hands behind her back as she looked down at Ziyang, who was bleeding from her 7 orifices and struggling to resist the terrifying attacks of the 8 great sovereigns. Chapter 4460. Ziyang raised her head with difficulty and looked coldly at Luoya. Luoya, you've gone too far. The higher-ups have long known about your affairs. Even if you exterminate my Zishuan clan now, the higher-ups will not hesitate to kill you. Even if you annihilate my Xian sect, you still won't be able to escape punishment. Luoya's lips curled into a mocking smile. Ziyang, you're too naive. The higher-ups only care about benefits and don't care about emotions. As long as your Xian clan is annihilated and the divine fire source falls back into our hands, the higher-ups will naturally be happy to cooperate with us again. They can even reap greater benefits. Why wouldn't they be happy? At this point, Luoya's smile grew even wider. She grinned and continued. Actually, we've received instructions from a certain lord to annihilate your Xian clan. As long as your Xian clan is annihilated and we successfully obtain the divine fire source, the faction behind that lord will protect our 13 high-tier realms. The final victory will belong to us, not you. Ziyang's heart trembled. As expected, a certain faction in Void Yin City had leaked her information and united the 13 high-tier realms to deal with the Xian clan. However, which faction would dare to risk being punished by the King of Hell to do such a thing? The three great families. Ziyang's pupils shrank. In Void Yin City, only the three great families could act first and report later. The Shulong family, or both. Ziyang's heart sank to the bottom. With the three great families intervening, the truth of her Xian clan's annihilation was very likely to be covered up. Everyone, don't hold back. Use your full strength. Kill Ziyang completely, and then slaughter the Xian clan. The divine fire source will become an ownerless item again. Luoyi said slowly, her voice cold. Lin Yu, Lan Dao, Huangju, and the other 7 great family sovereigns looked at each other and nodded. Their target was Ziyang. As long as Ziyang died and the Xian clan was annihilated, the higher-ups would have no choice but to hand the divine fire source to them. Ziyang, rest in peace. Lin Yu's eyes were cold. He held the short halberds with both hands and let out a soft shout. The halberds drew a strange arc in the air, and 2 crescent moon-like magic flew out. Blue Dao held the blue scepter in his hand and chanted spell. The scepter emitted a blue tide that swept over. Huangju had golden claws on both of his hands. They were as sharp as the claws of a golden-winged rock and emitted a dazzling golden light. He reached out gently, and the void exploded. A huge golden claw stretched out and grabbed at Ziyang's body. The other 4 also unleashed their best divine abilities. Luo Ya's right sword finger tapped lightly, and thousands of icicles suddenly bloomed behind her. Countless icicles followed her right hand and fell rapidly downwards. Her target was naturally Ziyang. A look of despair appeared in Ziyang's eyes. Ya and the others had not even used their full strength, yet she was already at a disadvantage. Now that the 8 of them had displayed their abilities, she knew that she no longer had the ability to resist. A divine warship descended at the border of the Zishuan realm. On the deck of the divine warship, Zhuowen stood at the bow. Behind him, Elder Lu and Elder Di stood silently, their expressions solemn. The moment the divine warship arrived at the Zishuan realm, Zhuowen sensed that something was amiss. He discovered that many places in the Zishuan realm were devastated, as if a great battle had just taken place. The deeper they went, the deeper the traces of battle. Many buildings had been reduced to ruins, and corpses were piled up everywhere. It was a tragic and eerie sight. What happened in the Zishuan realm? Elder Lu's eyes were sharp. He noticed that there were several lucky survivors in a valley. With a wave of his sleeve, he brought these lucky survivors to the deck. The survivors trembled and knelt on the deck. They kept kowtowing to Zhuowen and the others and begged for mercy. They were clearly scared out of their wits. Tell us what happened here, and then you can leave safely. Zhuowen looked at the group of survivors, and his gaze fell on the middle-aged man at the front who was slightly calmer. The middle-aged man knelt in front of Zhuowen, swallowed, and said, "The other higher realms have joined forces to attack our Zishuan realm." As soon as the allied forces entered the Zishuan realm, they started a massacre and left nothing behind. They are too ruthless. With the middle-aged man's narration, Zhuowen finally understood the current situation of the Zishuan realm. So ruthless. Are they planning to fight to the death? Zhuowen's face was gloomy. He knew very well that if the Zishuan clan was really wiped out, the sacred fire source could only be handed over to the other higher realms for safekeeping. At that time, even if the King of Hell stood on the Zishuan clan's side, it would be useless. After all, there must be a connection point between the superior realms and the higher realms. If the Zishuan realm was wiped out, they could only choose from the other higher realms. Elder Lu, Elder Di, I will go first. You lead the cultivator army and follow behind. Zhuowen turned to look at the 2 behind him and said in a deep voice, although the Shueshing family's divine ship was very fast, it would still take half a day to reach Zishuan Sacred City. However, Zhuowen could arrive in the blink of an eye if he used the chariot of chariots. Elder Lu and Elder Di were very puzzled when they heard this. Their divine worship was already fast enough. Could Zhuowen have a mount that was even faster than this divine worship? Zhuowen did not wait for the two to answer. He summoned the chariot of chariots, jumped on, and fled into the distance. In the blink of an eye, the chariot of chariots disappeared before Elder Lu and Elder Di's eyes. This speed, Elder Lu and Elder Di rubbed their eyes and looked at Zhuowen, who had disappeared without a trace. They could not believe what they had seen. The next moment, the chariot of chariots appeared in the sky above Zishuan, sacred city. Zhuowen's eyes gradually narrowed as he looked at the desolated sacred city that was filled with endless screams. Ziyang. Zhuowen immediately noticed that not far from the center of the sacred city, Ziyang was surrounded by 8 figures. She was struggling to hold on. The 8 figures all shone with resplendent starlight. They were all experts of the inverse starlight realm. At this moment, the 8 of them used their strongest divine abilities and attacked Ziyang below. Ziyang's eyes were filled with despair. She even closed them. She knew that she had fallen into a real desperate situation. There was no way she could survive. Swoosh! A strong wind suddenly swept over. Ziyang subconsciously opened her eyes and saw a black figure streak past her. Then, a hand grabbed her shoulder. Before Ziyang could react, she felt the world spinning around her. This is the sacred city's city wall? I was clearly near the central hall just now. Ziyang could not believe it. Then, she realized that a young man was holding her shoulder and carrying her to a chariot. Master, you're back. When Ziyang's gaze fell on the young man's face, she was pleasantly surprised. It seemed that her master had saved her life just now. Zhuowen gently put Ziyang down, and his eyes fell on the central hall. There, the strongest divine abilities of Lia and the others finally fell. Then the void in that area completely erupted with an extremely terrifying energy vortex, as if it was going to devour everything. Invisible waves of air spread out in layers and swept out toward the periphery. Zhuowen put his hands behind his back and faced the waves of air. His black hair fluttered, and his cold eyes fell on Lia, Huangju, and the others. Lia, Huangju, Linyu, and the others seemed to feel something. They suddenly raised their heads and looked in the direction of the city wall. There, a young man in black clothes, his clothes and hair fluttering wantonly. Chapter 4461. Zhuowen? He's still alive? Huangju's eyes narrowed as he recognized Zhuowen immediately. Back then, Zhuowen had killed many of the Nuwa clan's powerful fighters in the Golden Crow Mountains. He had even stolen the inheritance of the Saint Lord of 7 Emotions and 6 Desires. Later, in the Golden Crow Mountains, Zhuowen had been targeted by everyone. Nuwa had personally stepped in and forced him to self-destruct. But now, Zhuowen had appeared before him again, and his aura was much stronger than when he was in the Golden Crow Mountains. Zhuowen slowly raised his head, and his sharp gaze landed on Huangju. His expression was calm. Naturally, he had seen Huangju before. Back when Yua Ziqian was killed, Huangju was one of the murderers. He had been there at the time. It seemed that Huangju still did not know that the one who had self-destructed in the Golden Crow Mountains was only his puppet and not his actual body. This was why Huangju was so surprised to see him again. Luoya, Linyu, and the others were confused. This was the first time they had heard of Zhuowen's name. Of course, Luoya and the others had seen Zhuowen before. However, at that time, Zhuowen had appeared as a demonic cultivator. His appearance and aura were very different from now. This was why they did not recognize Zhuowen. This kid is not simple. Luoya frowned. She did not even see how this kid had saved Ziyang. In the blink of an eye, Ziyang had appeared at the edge of the city wall. This kid's sacred chariot is extraordinary. Its speed is probably even faster than a divine worship. It's also more agile than a divine worship, Lan Dao said in a low voice. He's just a piece of trash in the early cosmic Dharma stage. Although his mount is extraordinary, he's too weak. It's too easy to kill him. Mou, the great clan leader of the LV Ran clan, had a head full of green hair. His eyes emitted a sharp, cold light. He suddenly jumped up and shot towards Zhuo, one like a bolt of lightning. After I kill this kid, it will be your turn, Ziyang. In the blink of an eye, Mou appeared above the divine chariot. Both of his hands were holding onto the blade, and the inverse ancient star constellation behind him was roaring crazily. He was like a god that had descended to the mortal world, unstoppable. Early reverse ancient starlight stage. Zhuowen casually glanced at the approaching Mou. After sensing the latter's aura, he shook his head. Bang! Mou's two divine sabers slashed down fiercely. The terrifying saber light was like two falling moonlight, sharp and dazzling. Zhuowen stood on the chariot with his hands behind his back. He only raised his head slightly, and a purple gold light flickered between his eyebrows. Rumble. 2 rounds of saber light completely fell on the sacred chariot, erupting with an unprecedentedly terrifying light, illuminating the entire Xian sacred city in a vast expanse of white. Huangju, Luoya, and the rest squinted their eyes, wondering if Zhuowen was scared silly. The speed of the chariot was so fast, but he did not run away. Instead, he stood there and allowed Mou to attack him. Mou stood in the air with his saber in hand, looking down at Zhuowen, who was enveloped by a saber light, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. Kid, there's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There's no door to hell, but you still want to barge in. You're dead meat. Mou muttered to himself. Just when he was about to keep his divine saber, he suddenly lowered his head. He saw that the saber light below was suddenly torn apart by some kind of power, and a blazing purple gold light shot up into the sky. It was so dazzling and blazing. After the saber light disappeared, Mou was shocked to find that the divine chariot was still floating in the air without any damage. In the divine chariot, Zhuowen still had his hands behind his back, and he did not even move an inch. However, around him, a purple gold divine sword was like a swimming fish, constantly revolving around him like the most loyal bodyguard. You were so arrogant when you said that I was going to die. I thought that you were very powerful, but I did not expect your attack to be so weak. It's really too weak. Zhuowen looked at Mou, who was still in shock, and slowly spoke with a cold and emotionless voice. You must be joking. I can't be wrong. His aura is at most at the early stage of the cosmic phase. How could he block Mou's attack so easily? Lin Yu's eyes widened as he muttered to himself. Not only Lin Yu, but Luo Ye, Huangju, and the rest were also shocked. You dare to say that I'm weak. I did not use my full strength just now, but now I will definitely kill you. Mou was enraged. How could he not be angry when he was called weak by a cultivator whose cultivation was far lower than his? Hence, Mou used his strongest superpower, and his 2 sabers slashed out and across. Instantly, endless saber lights shot out, forming the phantom of a huge whale that was tens of thousands of feet long. Such a huge phantom of a whale was formed by pure saber light. Roar! The moment the phantom of a whale was formed, it dived down from the void and fell toward Zhuowen's sacred chariot. I said that you're weak, so you're too weak. Zhuowen's expression was cold. He gently raised his right hand and pointed out with his finger. All of a sudden, billowing devil chi appeared around him, and his eyes turned scarlet and demonic. In an instant, he entered the demonic state. The spiritual soul sword essence that was floating around his body instantly turned pitch black, and its power and aura suddenly increased, reaching a terrifying level. Swoosh! The pitch-black sword essence followed the direction that Zhuowen's finger was pointing at and burst out. The entire air exploded with an ear-piercing, tearing sound. Boom! The pitch-black sword essence pierced through the sky and instantly blasted onto the body of the whale that was formed by pure saber light. With a loud explosion, the huge whale collapsed, and countless saber lights burst out, shattering into countless light spots. A ray of black sword essence pierced through, and without any decrease in speed, it blasted towards Mou. Pucci! Before Mo you could even react, his forehead was pierced by the black sword essence, and blood spurted out. How is this possible? That was the last sentence that Mo said before he died. After saying that, his vision turned black, and he fell down, his body and soul destroyed. The spiritual soul sword essence in the demonic state was too powerful, and it instantly annihilated Mo's spiritual soul, causing his body and soul to be destroyed. He couldn't be more dead. It's him, that young demonic cultivator. The moment Luo Ye and Lan Dao saw Zhuan enter the demonic state, they immediately recognized him. Wasn't he the demonic cultivator who killed He Fa and took away the divine fire source? At that time, Luo Ye relied on He Fa's ring and used the art of communication to find the young demonic cultivator. However, they were still a step too late. Zhuan had already boarded the last divine ship in Zixian Saint City and was heading towards the Supreme Region. So that's how it is. That young demonic cultivator was also Zhuan in disguise. This kid is really cunning. Huangju was even more shocked, and he couldn't help but curse under his breath. However, right after he finished speaking, the gaze with which he looked at Zhuan was filled with fear. Just now, the scene of this kid easily killing Mo was still fresh in his mind. This kid's strength was too terrifying. Chapter 4462. What the hell is going on? The moment Mo fell, the other four great family sovereigns rushed over from another direction of the holy city. They split up with Luo Ye and the other four. Luo Ye and the rest besieged Yang to take down the center of the holy city, while they cleaned up the area outside the center of the holy city to prevent the Zixian clan survivors from escaping. Just now, the commotion caused by the battle between Zhuan and Mo was too great. Hence, the four of them rushed over to check it out. Mo is dead? Who did it? When the four of them arrived, they discovered Mo's corpse not far away. All of them were dumbstruck. It was him. Everyone, his name is Zhuan. Since he could easily kill Mo, I'm afraid he's not weaker than Ziyang at his peak. He might even be stronger. Huangju's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He suddenly spoke as his gaze swept across Luo Ye and the rest. His expression became extremely solemn. We should join forces and kill him first. He's a great threat. Luo Ye spoke in a deep voice as her eyes were filled with killing intent. Agreed. Let's kill him first. Lin Yu, Lan Dao, and the rest of the five agreed without hesitation. As for the four who just arrived, they frowned. They felt that Huangju and Luo Ye were making a fuss out of nothing. Although the four of them didn't agree, they didn't dare to raise any objections. After all, Mo's corpse was still there. Zhuan wasn't someone to be trifled with. It was better to join forces than to be defeated one by one. Everyone, follow me. Let's attack together. Luo Ye suddenly shouted as she summoned her defying ancient star form. The aura of a late-stage defying ancient star form could be seen at a glance. The moment Luo Ye summoned her defying ancient star form, Huangju, Lin Yu, Lan Dao, and the rest of the great family sovereigns also summoned their own defying ancient star form. A total of 11 defying ancient star forms hovered in the sky, as if they had filled up the entire sky. How magnificent and intense was that scene? Zhuan is really fast. Since he's here, it means that the Su family's army isn't far away. We can't stay here any longer. The moment Ya and the others summoned their ancient celestial bodies, in a dark and remote corner of Zixian Saint City, a black shadow muttered to himself. In the blink of an eye, the black figure disappeared. You really think too highly of me. The 11 of you are the great clan masters of your respective higher domains, the highest leaders. But now you've joined forces just to deal with a nobody like me. Zhuan stood on the sacred chariot with his hands behind his back, calmly glancing at the 11 defying ancient starlight experts around him. Ziyang stood beside Zhuan, her face pale with fright. She didn't doubt Zhuan's strength, but she didn't believe that Zhuan would be a match for these 11 people. Master, didn't you say that the Void family's army is about to arrive? We don't have to fight them head-on. We can meet up with the Void family first. Xiang lowered her head and suggested softly. It's all right. They can't do anything to me. Zhuowen waved his hand. He bent his finger and pointed at the suspension of the sacred chariot. The sacred chariot flew out of the encirclement as fast as lightning. As for Zhuowen, he leaped out and slowly walked through the air towards Luo Ye and the others. So fast. This boy's mount. The pupils of Lia and the others shrank into needles. The speed of the sacred chariot was too fast. Before they could react, this boy had already escaped the encirclement set up by the 11 of them. In other words, if this boy wanted to leave, the 11 of them couldn't stop him at all. Zhuowen, you have such a magical mount, but you didn't choose to escape? You still dare to fight with us. I really admire your courage. Huangju looked at Zhuowen, who was walking through the void, with a cold smile on his face. And the others also breathed a sigh of relief. They were really afraid that Zhuowen would rely on his powerful mount to escape. After all, this boy's potential was too great. Right now, he only had the cosmic aspect, and he already had such strength. If his cultivation was higher in the future, wouldn't it be even more terrifying? Therefore, this boy must die. They had to strangle him in the cradle now. The reason why I didn't escape is because you are not qualified to make me escape. You are not worthy. Zhuowen slowly walked over. His right hand gently grasped the void, and the Taiyu sacred sword appeared in his palm. The demonic aura around him became denser and denser. The billowing black demonic aura spread for thousands of miles. He, on the other hand, was like a demon king from hell who wanted to destroy everything in this world. Humph, arrogant and conceited. The last 4 people to arrive snorted coldly and took the lead to charge toward Zhuowen. Kill, Luya shouted and followed closely behind with Lan Dao, Huangju, and the others. Boom, boom, boom. Zhuowen was awe-inspiring and fearless. He rushed towards the 11 people in front of him with his own strength. Both sides used all their magical powers and collided with each other, creating extremely terrifying energy ripples. With just this collision, 1/5 of the buildings in Zixian Sacred City had been completely turned into ruins. At the same time, Zhuowen summoned 3 cosmic aspects and fought with the 11 inverse ancient celestial aspects. Bang! In an instant, the first 4 people to rush over were sent flying by Zhuowen's attack. Lia and the others followed one after another and blasted all kinds of magical powers. Zhuowen used his divine soul sword intent to cut through all of them, and he couldn't help but retreat more than 10 steps. This guy is too strong. He has 3 cosmic aspects, and they weren't destroyed by our inverse ancient celestial aspects in the first place. Luya, Huangju, and the others were shocked when they saw the first 4 people to be sent flying by Zhuowen's attack. The killing intent in their hearts grew stronger and stronger. Die! Luya, Huangju, and the other 6 people didn't give Zhuowen any chance to breathe. They all came and attacked with all their might. Boom! 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 7 magical powers landed on Zhuowen's body and exploded with terrifying energy. Secret technique: formless water escape. Zhuowen's body turned into formless water and blended into the depths of the earth, cleverly dodging the magical powers of Lia and the others. The formless water quickly moved in the depths of the earth and condensed again, appearing behind the 4 people who were repelled by him. The cultivation of these 4 people was the weakest. They were only at the early inverse ancient starlight realm, which was almost the same as MOU. Naturally, Zhuowen would start with the weaker ones. Heaven and earth, primordial one-line heaven, sword shaking the 9 heavens, life in the morning, death in the evening. The moment Zhuowen condensed, he unleashed all 3 of his self-created magical powers. The power of the 3 magical powers in the demonic state was too terrifying. Before the 4 of them could even react, they were completely enveloped by it. Mournful screams could be heard continuously. Not good. Luya and the others turned around and saw the 4 people being drowned by Zhuowen's 3 magical powers. After the continuous screams, they saw 4 corpses falling on the ground. The 4 corpses were almost torn into pieces. None of them were intact. Bastard, this guy. Is this guy really at the cosmic manifestation realm? Xianku of the Xuanbo clan's eyes were filled with fear as he said in a trembling voice, "These 4 idiots underestimated the enemy too much. Everyone, we have to work together. We can't give this kid the chance to defeat us one by one." Luoya cursed in a low voice. Huang Ju's eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. Roar, roar, roar. Suddenly, mournful screams could be heard from the void. Following the fall of the 4 people, 4 inverse ancient star forms were destroyed. The 3 avatars of Zhuo Wan, who were originally at a disadvantage and passive, were now in a much more relaxed situation. However, under the siege of the 7 inverse ancient star forms, his 3 cosmic manifestations were still struggling. They probably wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Zhuowen knew that he had to end the battle quickly. "Now it's your turn." Zhuowen waved the extreme nether sacred sword as his eyes fell on Lia and the others. Chapter 4463. Kill. Luoya leaped up. Her body was emitting blue frost as she rapidly rushed toward Zhuowen. The killing intent in her eyes was so dense that it seemed to have materialized. In the depths of her killing intent, there was extreme fear. This brat was too strong. If she didn't eliminate him now, she and the Luotian clan would be uprooted by him in the future. Lin Yu, Lan Dao, and the rest also thought at this point. Their killing intent wasn't any weaker than Luoya's. They followed closely behind Luoya. Huang Ju's eyes flickered as he followed at the back. His brows were tightly furrowed, and no one knew what he was thinking. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Zhuowen's eyes flickered with red light. Soul-type sword intent shot out from his glabella and engulfed him like a storm. Kill. Zhuowen also rushed out. Hundreds and thousands of sword intents revolved around him, forming a terrifying storm of sword intents. Both sides collided fiercely. Sword intents swept out, tearing the sky apart. Divine abilities were like dazzling fireworks that constantly exploded. In the storm of sword intents, Zhuowen was like a bolt of lightning. He held the Taiyu Saint's sword and engaged in an intense battle with the 7 people. Sparks flew, and the clanging sounds of divine weapons colliding rang out incessantly. Suddenly, 3 figures flew out in an extremely sorry state. These 3 people were the weakest among the 7. They were only at the early Ni, Gu Starlight Realm. If it wasn't for a portion of Zhuowen's attacks being blocked by Luoya and the rest, the 3 of them might have been killed by Zhuowen in the collision just now. So strong. No wonder he could kill Mou and the rest so easily. Xianku of the Xuanbo clan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked at the young man who was in an intense battle with Luoya and the rest. Xianku's strength could only be considered as one of the weakest among these people. He wasn't much weaker than Mou. Naturally, he wasn't a match for Zhuowen. At this moment, although the 3 of them were still in the periphery of the storm of sword intents, it was still difficult for them to resist the incoming divine soul sword intents. Their injuries were getting more and more serious. Demonic Eye. Within the storm of sword intent, Zhuowen swung his sword, forcing back Lan Dao and Lin Yu who had come together. At the same time, a scorching, scarlet light shone from the depths of his eyes. Boom! Boom! The moment Zhuowen opened his demonic eye, huge demonic god statues fell from the sky. With the support of Mo Ran, each demon god statue was tens of thousands of feet tall. They attacked Luoya and the others with unparalleled momentum. Luoya's expression changed slightly. Her jade-like hands turned into translucent ice sculptures, and she suddenly swung them out. The demon god statues that had surrounded them were all frozen into ice, and they gave off a chilling aura. However, there were too many fiend celestial statues. They came one after another, causing Luoya to be in a passive situation. Not far away, Lin Yu, Lan Dao, and Huang Ju were the same. Their situation was even more difficult than Luoya's. Among this group of people, Luo Yu was the strongest. Her cultivation had reached the late stage of inverse ancient starlight, while Huang Ju and the other two were only at the middle stage of inverse ancient starlight. They were barely able to resist the spiritual sword intent. With the addition of these countless fiend celestial statues, it was naturally very difficult for them. The most unlucky ones should be Xian Ku and the other two. They were the first to be repelled and were also the weakest. At this moment, they were entangled by the fiend celestial statues. The situation was not optimistic at all. Demonic flame. The moment Zhuowen summoned the fiend celestial statues, he did not stop. His eyes burst out with scorching scarlet flames. The demonic flame followed the storm of sword chi and suddenly shot out, enveloping the entire range of the storm of sword chi. Luo Ye, Lan Dao, and the others were naturally infected by the demonic flame. What kind of flame is this? It's so terrifying. Lin Yu, Lan Dao, and Huang Ju worked together to resist the demonic god statue. Among them, Lin Yu was accidentally burned by the demonic god flame. His right hand was immediately set ablaze. Like a prairie fire, it instantly burned his hand into ashes. Moreover, the demonic flame was extremely fast. It began to follow his right arm and swept towards his body. Lin Yu's reaction was extremely fast. He directly cut off his right arm at the shoulder. He looked at his burned arm in horror and fell to the ground. Lan Dao and Huang Ju naturally saw it too. They were all fearful. They took out their defensive artifacts and placed them around them to resist the demonic flame's corrosion. However, what made them fearful was that the demonic flame was too powerful. It kept burning the divine light on the surface of the defensive artifacts. At this rate, the defensive artifacts would eventually be burned through by the demonic flame. Luo Ye condensed layer after layer of ice walls around her and blocked the demonic flame. She was much better off than Lin Yu and the other two. However, Luo Ye was also very fearful of the demonic flame. She was surrounded by the terrifying demonic flame. She did not dare to casually go out for a while. Suddenly, outside the storm of sword chi, 3 shrill screams sounded at the same time. Xian Ku and the other two, who were originally struggling to resist the fiend celestial statues, had nowhere to hide when the demonic flame swept over them. They were completely engulfed by the demonic flame. They struggled with all their might in the scarlet flames. However, it was just a struggle. In less than 10 breaths, they were completely burned to ashes. Their bodies and souls were destroyed. Damn it! How does this guy have so many powerful and strange moves? Lan Dao looked at Zhuowen, who was not far away. His eyes were filled with fear. Huang Ju's eyes flashed. He quietly took out an eye of the void and hung it on his waist. Whoosh! All of a sudden, a terrifying sound of wind being torn apart swept over. Lin Yu, Lan Dao, and Huang Ju could not help but raise their heads. They saw that Zhuowen had appeared above them. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. He held the Taiyu's sacred sword in his right hand and slashed down. Clang! 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 Zhuowen slashed down again and again. The sword light was like lightning, and the sword chi was like a rainbow. It was as if it was going to pierce through the sky. Originally, under the attack of the demonic flames, the defense of the 3 of them was already somewhat strenuous. However, as Zhuowen waved his sword, they finally could not hold on any longer and completely collapsed. Rip! Endless scarlet flames poured down like a flood, drowning Lin Yu, Lan Dao, and Huang Ju. The 3 of them struggled to defend against the demonic flame. Their bodies were full of openings. Zhuowen took a step forward and arrived in front of Lin Yu in an instant. The Taiyu's sacred sword in his hand suddenly stabbed out, aiming at Lin Yu's forehead. Lin Yu's pupil shrank. A strong sense of danger rose in his heart. Without thinking, he placed the divine spear in his left hand in front of him and blocked Zhuowen's sword. Clang! The sword and the spear collided, and the sound of metal clashing rang out. Lin Yu groaned and could not help but retreat. At the same time, he exposed a huge opening. With a thought, Zhuowen sent the demonic flame into Lin Yu's body through the opening. Lin Yu's left hand and even his body were completely covered by the demonic flame. Lin Yu screamed. His eyes were filled with determination. He immediately chopped off his head. As soon as his head fell off, he fled into the distance like a bolt of lightning. Chapter 4464. Kill. Luoya leaped up. Her body was emitting blue frost as she rapidly rushed towards Zhuowen. The killing intent in her eyes was so dense that it seemed to have materialized. In the depths of her killing intent, there was extreme fear. This brat was too strong. If she didn't eliminate him now, she and the Luotian clan would be uprooted by him in the future. Lin Yu, Lan Dao, and the rest also thought at this point. Their killing intent wasn't any weaker than Luoya's. They followed closely behind Luoya. Huangju's eyes flickered as he followed at the back. His brows were tightly furrowed, and no one knew what he was thinking. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Zhuowen's eyes flickered with red light. Soul-type sword intent shot out from his glabella and engulfed him like storm. Kill. Zhuowen also rushed out. Hundreds and thousands of sword intents revolved around him, forming a terrifying storm of sword intents. Both sides collided fiercely. Sword intents swept out, tearing the sky apart. Divine abilities were like dazzling fireworks that constantly exploded. In the storm of sword intents, Zhuowen was like a bolt of lightning. He held the Taiyu Saint's sword and engaged in an intense battle with the 7 people. Sparks flew, and the clanging sounds of divine weapons colliding rang out incessantly. Suddenly, 3 figures flew out in an extremely sorry state. These 3 people were the weakest among the 7. They were only at the early Gu Starlight Realm. If it wasn't for a portion of Zhuowen's attacks being blocked by Luoya and the rest, the 3 of them might have been killed by Zhuowen in the collision just now. So strong. No wonder he could kill Mou and the rest so easily. Xianku of the Xuanbo clan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked at the young man who was in an intense battle with Luoya and the rest. Xianku's strength could only be considered as one of the weakest among these people. He wasn't much weaker than Mou. Naturally, he wasn't a match for Zhuowen. At this moment, although the 3 of them were still in the periphery of the storm of sword intents, it was still difficult for them to resist the incoming divine soul sword intents. Their injuries were getting more and more serious. Demonic eye. Within the storm of sword intent, Zhuowen swung his sword, forcing back Lan Dao and Lin Yu who had come together. At the same time, a scorching scarlet light shone from the depths of his eyes. Boom! Boom! The moment Zhuowen opened his demonic eye, huge demonic god statues fell from the sky. With the support of Mo Ran, each demon god statue was tens of thousands of feet tall. They attacked Luoya and the others with unparalleled momentum. Luoya's expression changed slightly. Her jade-like hands turned into translucent ice sculptures, and she suddenly swung them out. The demon god statues that had surrounded them were all frozen into ice, and they gave off a chilling aura. However, there were too many fiend celestial statues. They came one after another, causing Luoya to be in a passive situation. Not far away, Lin Yu, Lan Dao, and Huangju were the same. Their situation was even more difficult than Luoya's. Among this group of people, Luoya was the strongest. Her cultivation had reached the late ancient starlight realm, while Huangju and the other 2 were only at the middle ancient starlight realm. They were barely able to resist the spiritual sword intent. Adding the countless fiend celestial statues, it was naturally very strenuous for them. The most unlucky one should be Xianku and the other 2. They were the first to be repelled, and their strength was also the weakest. At this moment, they were entangled by the fiend celestial statues. The situation was not optimistic at all. Demonic flame. The moment Zhuowen summoned the fiend celestial statues, he did not stop. Blazing scarlet flames burst out from his eyes. The demonic flame followed the storm of sword chi and suddenly shot out, enveloping the entire range of the storm of sword chi. Luoya, Lan Dao, and the others were naturally infected by the demonic flame. What kind of flame is this? It's so terrifying. Lin Yu, Lan Dao, and Huang Ju joined forces to resist the fiend celestial statues. Lin Yu was accidentally burned by the demonic flame. His right hand was immediately ignited. Like a prairie fire, it was instantly burned to ashes. Moreover, the demonic flame was extremely fast. It began to follow his right arm and swept towards his body. Lin Yu's reaction was extremely fast. He directly cut off his right arm at the shoulder. His eyes were filled with horror as he looked at his burned arm that fell to the ground. Lan Dao and Huang Ju naturally saw it too. They were all fearful. They took out their defensive artifacts and placed them around them to resist the demonic flame's corrosion. However, what made them fearful was that the demonic flame was too powerful. It kept burning the divine light on the surface of the defensive artifacts. At this rate, the defensive artifacts would probably be burned through by the demonic flame in the end. Luo Yi condensed layer after layer of ice walls around her and blocked the demonic flame. She was much better off than Lin Yu and the other two. However, Luo Yi was also very fearful of the demonic flame. Her surroundings were covered with terrifying demonic flame. She did not dare to casually go out for a while. Suddenly, 3 shrill screams rang out from the periphery of the storm of sword chi. Xian Ku and the other two, who were originally struggling to resist the fiend celestial statues, had nowhere to hide when the demonic flame swept over them. They were completely engulfed by the demonic flame. They struggled with all their might in the scarlet flames. However, it was just a struggle. In less than 10 breaths, they were completely burned to ashes. Their bodies and souls were destroyed. Damn it! How does this guy have so many powerful and strange moves? Lan Dao looked at Zhuowen, who was not far away. His eyes were filled with fear. Huang Ju's eyes flashed. He quietly took out an Eye of the Void and hung it on his waist. Whoosh! All of a sudden, a terrifying sound of wind being torn apart swept over. Lin Yu, Lan Dao, and Huang Ju could not help but raise their heads. They saw that Zhuowen had appeared above them. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. He held the Taiyu sacred sword in his right hand and slashed down. Clang! 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 Zhuowen slashed down again and again. The sword light was like lightning, and the sword chi was like a rainbow. It was as if it was going to pierce through the sky. Originally, under the attack of the demonic flames, the defense of the 3 of them was already somewhat strenuous. However, as Zhuowen waved his sword, they finally could not hold on any longer and completely collapsed. Rip! Endless scarlet flames poured down like a flood, drowning Lin Yu, Lan Dao, and Huang Ju. The 3 of them struggled to resist the demonic flame. Their bodies were full of openings. Zhuowen took a step forward and arrived in front of Lin Yu in an instant. He suddenly stabbed the Taiyu sacred sword in his hand, aiming at Lin Yu's forehead. Lin Yu's pupils shrank. A strong sense of danger rose in his heart. He did not even think about it. He held the divine spear in his left hand in front of him and blocked Zhuowen's sword. Clang! The sword and the spear collided, and the sound of metal clashing rang out. Lin Yu groaned and could not help but retreat. At the same time, he exposed a huge opening. Zhuowen's mind moved. The billowing demonic flame rushed in through the opening. Lin Yu's left hand and even his body were completely covered by the demonic flame. Lin Yu screamed. His eyes were filled with determination. He directly chopped off his head. As soon as his head fell off, he fled into the distance like a bolt of lightning. Chapter 4465. Elder Di, Elder Lu. Zhuowen cupped his hands and smiled at the 2 elders on the divine warship. Elder Di and Elder Lu stopped the divine warship in front of Zhuowen and walked down with the cultivator army. Young Master Zhua, you're too polite. Is there anything else we can do for you now? Elder Di and Elder Lu scratched their heads, feeling a little embarrassed. This time, they had come to assist Zhuowen under Li Yinglong's orders. It was just that, from the looks of it, they all seemed to have become superfluous. Zhuowen alone resolved the Purple Jade Holy City's crisis. At the same time, they were more and more in awe of Zhuowen. Not only was Zhuowen powerful, but he also had endless trump cards. For example, Zhuowen's mysterious divine chariot was many times faster than their divine worship. In their eyes, Zhuowen was a mystery that could never be solved. Zhuowen pondered for a moment and said, "Elders stay in Zixian's sacred city for a few days. After the clan is reorganized, I'll have to rely on you to conquer other high-level realms." Elder Lu and Elder Di hurriedly waved their hands, saying that they didn't dare. Ziyang and Luoya, who were standing behind Zhuowen, were dumbfounded. Elder Lu and Elder Di were the higher-ups of the Shueshing family, but they were so polite to Zhuowen, which moved them. "This boy is not as simple as he looks. It seems that it's not bad for me to recognize him as my master." Luoya's eyes flickered, and her mind began to wander. Next, under Ziyang's arrangement, Elder Di and Elder Lu stayed in Zixian's sacred palace one after another. The great saintess Zi Yuan and the other higher-ups of the clan, who were hiding in Zixian's sacred palace, all knelt in front of Zhuowen after learning the whole story, thanking Zhuowen profusely. The great saintess Zi Yuan's mood was the most complicated. Back then, she thought that her cultivation should not be much weaker than Zhuowen's, and her status should be higher than Zhuowen's. Now, only a short time had passed, and Zhuowen already had such a deep relationship with the Shueshing family of the Super Realm. Their female supremacy Ziyang and Luo Yu were also respectful to him. Thinking about it now, Zi Yuan's heart was full of bitterness. If Zilong was still here, would she regret it when she found out that the people she tried to make things difficult for are no longer the same as before? Zi Yuan was in a daze. She couldn't help but think of the third holy maiden, Zilong. 3 days later, Zixian's sacred city returned to normal. New buildings were rebuilt in the ruins of the holy city. The upper echelons of the Zixuan clan were all kneeling in front of the hall, not daring to look up at Zhuowen. "Let's follow the plan. Elder Di, Elder Lu, I will conquer the Nuar realm and Luo God realm. The rest of the realms will be left to you two. If you have any objections, feel free to raise them." Zhuowen looked at Elder Di and Elder Lu, who were sitting next to him, and said with a smile. Elder Lu and Elder Di shook their heads and said, "Of course we have no objections. Except for the Nuar realm and Luo God realm, the great sovereigns of the other higher realms were basically killed by you, young Master Zhua. This mission is really easy for us." They already knew about what happened in Zixian's sacred city. It could be said that Zhuowen's task for them was very simple. "Good. If you two have no objections, then let's go. I will wait for your good news." Zhuowen slowly stood up and looked at Elder Lu and Elder Di with a smile. "Young Master Zhua, don't worry. We will not disappoint you." Elder Lu and Elder Di cupped their fists at Zhuowen and left the temple. "Master, Huangju just sent a message saying that everything is a misunderstanding. He hopes that you and he will mind your own business in the future." After Elder Lu and Elder Di left, Ziyang bent down and whispered to Zhuowen, "Mind my own business? How dare Huangju say that?" Zhuowen's eyes flashed with a cold light. Back then, he came to the 100 Outer Realms alone to find the whereabouts of Moyan Wushang. The second reason was the threat from the Nuwa clan. His hometown, the Starry Sky, was too small for the great sovereign of the Nuwa clan, Huangju. If it weren't for Duan Jipeng's help, most of the living beings in the Starry Sky would have been destroyed. Now, he had finally succeeded in his cultivation. He had to settle old and new debts with the Nuwa clan. "Brother Duan, you've finally come out of seclusion," Zhuowen suddenly said softly. A crack appeared in the void beside him, and a figure slowly walked out. He had a handsome face and waist-length hair. It was Duan Jipeng. "I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. I've always remembered concubine Yun's revenge." Duan Jipeng's voice was low. He clenched his fists tightly, and a terrifying aura flowed out of his body. Zhuowen nodded slightly. Duan Jipeng's progress was fast. During the time when the Saint Lord of 7 emotions and 6 desires was cultivating in the Starry Sky realm, his cultivation had reached the peak of the cosmic Dharma plane. With such a cultivation, He could be considered an expert standing at the peak of the higher realms. Today is the day you get your revenge. Are you ready? Zhuowen looked at Duan Jiping and smiled. Okay. Duan Jiping nodded. Let's go. Zhuowen stepped out of the temple. Duan Jiping, Ziyang, and Luo Ye followed closely behind. Many of the higher-ups of the Zixian clan in the temple followed behind, bowing their heads. Zhuowen summoned the chariot of chariots and leaped onto it. He looked in the direction of the Nuwa realm. After today, the Nuwa clan will cease to exist. In the central grand temple of Nuwa City, Huangju sat on the divine throne with his brows tightly knitted. His body was still trembling slightly. Everything that had happened in Zixian City kept replaying in his mind. In front of the throne, the Reverend Zhou, Emperor of the two clans, and the Reverend Nu Jun of the three clans looked at Huangju worriedly. Ever since Huangju returned, he had been sitting on the throne. His body kept trembling, and he was in a daze. They naturally understood what happened in Zixian Sacred City. Especially when they found out that Zhuowen was still alive, they were very shocked. Great Clan Lord, since you've escaped death, you'll be fine. No matter how strong Zhuowen is, he won't dare to cause trouble in our Nuwa realm. The Reverend Zhou, Emperor of the two clans, said, Our Nuwa city's defensive power is one of the best among all the high-level divine cities. If he comes, we'll make sure he doesn't leave. The Reverend Nu Jun of the three clans said confidently. Huangju looked at the two, took a deep breath, and said in a deep voice, Nuwa City may not be able to stop Zhuowen. If we can avoid the battle, then we won't. Have you delivered the message I asked you to send to Ziyang? The Reverend Zhou, Emperor, and the Reverend Nu Jun looked at each other. They thought that Huangju was making a fuss over nothing. However, they didn't dare to disobey Huangju's order. They nodded. Chapter 4466. Has Ziyang replied yet? Huangju quickly asked. Not yet, she said. Huangju frowned. Just as he was about to speak, the entire city shook violently. Three clan masters, enemy attack. Enemy attack. Outside the temple, several servants suddenly walked in and knelt in the middle of the temple. Their voices were filled with fear. What? Huangju was greatly alarmed and had a bad premonition. He quickly stood up and rushed out of the shrine. The Zhou Emperor and she quickly followed behind him. After they walked out of the temple, they looked up. At the top of the city, there was a luxurious and exquisite sacred chariot suspended in the air. On the sacred chariot, a young man stood with his hands behind his back, coldly looking down at the huge Nuwa divine city. Huangju looked at the young man, standing on the sacred chariot with fear in his eyes. Until now, the incident that happened in Zixian Holy City still lingered in his mind for a long time, unable to disperse. That little bastard is still alive. She frowned slightly, and a trace of hostility flashed in her eyes. Although Huangju told her that Zhuowen had killed many starlight experts in Zixian Sacred City, she didn't believe it. Her impression of Zhuowen was still the same as when they were in the Golden Crow mountain range. He was the young man who could only run for his life after being chased by her. In her eyes, no matter how strong Zhuowen was, how strong could he be? Great Clan Master, aren't you being too cautious? No matter how strong Zhuowen is, can he compete with the entire Nuwa clan? Now, I'm going to gather all the elites in the clan. We must kill this kid. Her eyes were full of killing intent, and she planned to go to the clan to gather the real elites. Wait, let's not provoke him. Open the city defense array and guard it first. Huangju suddenly said. She and the Zhou Emperor frowned slightly. They were slightly displeased and felt that Huangju was being too cautious. However, Huangju was the great clan master after all, so they didn't dare to disobey him. Not long after, the continent emperor opened the great city barrier array, while the handsome female cultivator gathered over 10,000 elite cultivators in the central square. Master, they opened the city defense array. Should we take this opportunity to stop them? In the sacred chariot, Ziyang saw a layer of dazzling array ripples on the surface of Niwa Divine City and couldn't help but remind Zhuowen. It's okay. I'm here today for revenge. Only when they're fully prepared can we defeat them and make them feel the deepest despair. Zhuowen had his hands behind his back. His expression was calm, but the words he spoke were incomparably cold. After the city defense array was fully opened, Huang Ju calmed down a little. Although he was curious why Zhuowen didn't take the opportunity to attack the city before the city defense array was fully formed, he didn't think too much about it. He just thought that Zhuowen was afraid of the Niwa clan and didn't attack immediately. Zhuowen, I've sent Ziyang a message before, haven't I? This is all a misunderstanding. You and I can stay out of each other's business from now on. Why do we have to fight? Huang Ju rose into the air and looked at Zhuowen on the sacred chariot. Zhuowen indifferently looked down at Huang Ju. Suddenly, he pointed at Duan Jiping and asked, Huang Ju, do you still remember him? Huang Ju looked at Duan Jiping and said indifferently, Duan Jiping, looks like you're on good terms with Zhuowen. You seduced my granddaughter and stole the dark chakra, eye of my clan. It's a serious crime. Since you were acquainted with Zhuowen, I can let bygones be bygones for his sake. Duan Jiping trembled and clenched his fists. He stared at Huang Ju. Huang Ju, you're really shameless. Who killed Imperial concubine Yun? And who stole whose dark chakra? I? You old bastard, you deserve to die. Duan Jiping suppressed his anger. Huang Ju's face turned cold. Duan Jiping, you're too presumptuous. Don't think that you can be so unscrupulous just because you have Zhuowen's support. I can kill you easily. You'd better stop before you go too far. Zhuowen, who was watching coldly from the sidelines, interrupted coldly. Brother Duan is my friend. You'd better be polite. Huang Ju's face froze. Anger surged in his eyes. He had shown enough respect, but Zhuowen still didn't know what was good for him. Did he really think that he, Huang Ju, was a pushover? Even though Zhuowen was very powerful, Niwa City had been built up over the years. He might not be able to take them down. Do you still remember the heartless plan of the Niwa clan in the lower realm? One of my confidants has become the sacrifice of your ruthless and desireless plan. She suffered a lot, and it's all because of you. Zhuowen continued. Huang Ju's eyes narrowed. The continent emperor suddenly spoke. You know about the heartless plan? Did you kill Venerable Hongruwei? The continent emperor was the one who led the heartless plan. He had conducted experiments in many lower realms and sacrificed countless lives. Finally, he succeeded in one of the lower realms. However, there were exceptions. Even Venerable Hongruwei and the others he sent died in the lower realms. This made the continent emperor very angry. Originally, he planned to track Venerable Hongruwei's aura and find out which lower realms he came from. Then he would sacrifice all the lives in that lower realms. However, he was shocked to find that Venerable Hongruwei's aura was sealed. He couldn't find a specific location in the end, so he left it at that. Now that Zhuowen suddenly mentioned it, he immediately recalled this matter. That's right, I killed him. Back then, I was a native of that lower realms. I came to the 100 Outer Realms in order to become stronger, so that I can wipe out the Niwa clan and prevent future troubles. Zhuowen said calmly. Zhuowen, I'm afraid you can't even break the Great City Barrier Formation. You want to eliminate the Niwa clan? What a joke. The handsome woman sneered. Whether or not I can eliminate the Niwa clan is not up to you. It's up to me. Zhuowen sneered. He took a step forward and appeared on the surface of the Great City Barrier Formation as if he had teleported. He waved his right sleeve. Instantly, many black array discs flashed out and circled around him, spinning clockwise. He formed a seal with both hands. Lines of array runes surged out and formed a strange vortex. The surrounding black formation plates revolved around the whirlpool and spun continuously. Bang! The vortex suddenly rushed out and heavily smashed onto the great defensive formation. An extremely ear-piercing explosive sound was emitted. Crack! 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 The strange sound kept ringing on the surface of the Great City Barrier Formation. It spread throughout the entire Niwa Divine City. All the clansmen in the city couldn't help but raise their heads. Then they were shocked to find that the great city barrier formation that they were so proud of had countless cracks on it. How is this possible? The great city barrier formation is at the third sky of the eternal realm. How could he break it so easily? The handsome woman was dumbfounded. The smile at the corner of her mouth was completely stiff. Her face was filled with disbelief. Huangju and the continent emperor's expressions changed drastically. Chapter 4467. Zhuowen hovered in the air, his right hand forming a hook as he made a grabbing motion. With a cracking sound, the enormous Great City Barrier Array finally could not withstand the enormous pressure and collapsed with a loud bang. Array discs formed several rings around Zhuowen's body, each of them emitting a powerful ripple of array runes. The Great Defender Array of Nuwa City was only at the third heaven of the eternal realm. For Zhuowen, it was not difficult for him to break this level of array. Kill! A ferocious glint flashed in the girl's eyes. She leaped up, leading tens of thousands of elite troops, like a dragon leaping through the 9 heavens, and rushed toward the sacred chariot in the sky. The Zhou Emperor followed closely behind, his eyes cold. The merciless plan was the result of his life's work. It was about to succeed, but it was ruined by this man. Now, the Zhou Emperor's heart was filled with killing intent. He only wanted to kill Zhuowen as soon as possible. Only Huangju's face was extremely pale. The scene in Zixian's sacred city a few days ago was still echoing in his mind. This man was too strong. If even the Great Defender Array could not stop him, there was nothing in Nuwa City that could stop him. Girl, Zhou Emperor, retreat. Don't fight this man head-on. Huangju suddenly shouted. He wanted to stop the handsome woman and the continent emperor from rushing out. However, he was one step too slow. The girl had already appeared in front of the sacred chariot. At this moment, the girl's body was covered in dazzling starlight, like a goddess bathed in starlight. She held the feather fan in her right hand and suddenly threw it at Zhuowen. The feather fan expanded in the wind, suddenly becoming dozens of feet wide, and the surface of the fan was decorated with starlight. Whoosh! The girl waved her right hand, and the feather fan swept through the air. Fierce divine wind whistled out. Countless divine wind condensed into hundreds of giant dragons, circling around and attacking the sacred chariot in the center from all directions. Boom! 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 The hundreds of giant dragons slammed into the sacred chariot, and then there was a series of explosions. The space around the chariot collapsed with a loud rumble, forming cracks and black holes one after another. It looked exceptionally terrifying. This was her strongest innate technique. Even if it was Zhuowen, he would most likely be heavily injured if he took this attack head-on. Handsome girl, be careful behind you. Suddenly, the continent emperor's terrified voice could be heard. The girl's pupils tightened, and she suddenly turned her head. She happened to see a divine carriage floating in the air, stopping 100 meters behind her. Zhuowen was standing on top of the divine chariot, completely unharmed. He was only looking at him with a cold smile. At this moment, a chill ran down the woman's spine. A chill ran from the soles of her feet straight up to her Tianling acupoint. When did Zhuowen appear behind her? She didn't notice it at all. Luoya, it's time for you to show me your loyalty, Zhuowen said slowly with his hands behind his back. Luoya, who had been standing respectfully behind the chariot in an inconspicuous manner, cupped her hands deeply and walked out of the chariot. As soon as Luoya appeared, she no longer concealed her late-stage ancient starlight aura. With the divine chariot as the center, the surrounding temperature dropped sharply. Countless ice crystals appeared out of nowhere in the air. Rumble. Above the void behind Luoya, a huge ancient starlight broke through the air and appeared. The tens of thousands of elites brought by the girl were all frozen into ice sculptures as soon as they came into contact with the ice domain released by Luoya. No one was spared. Moreover, the freezing speed was getting faster and faster. First, it was the cultivator army at the front. Then it spread rapidly. More than half of the cultivators were turned into ice sculptures, and fell from the sky. The cultivator army at the back, seeing how powerful Luo Yu was, fled in horror. Unfortunately, the ice domain released by Luo Yu spread too fast. In the blink of an eye, all the cultivator army was frozen into ice sculptures. No one was able to escape. Luo Shan clan's patriarch, Luo Yu. The moment the girl and the continent emperor saw Luo Yu, they were both shocked. Their eyes were filled with fear. In a higher realm, Luo Yu was a supreme expert, second only to Ziyang. She was much stronger than Huangju. Due to the divine chariot's ability to automatically block divine sense, Luo Yu and Ziyang were sitting in the divine chariot in a very low-key manner. Therefore, the moment Huangju and the others saw the divine chariot, they only saw Zhuowen. They didn't notice Luo Yu and Ziyang. Girl, retreat quickly. The Zhou emperor immediately retreated to the back and warned the woman loudly. The girl's eyes were filled with horror. She didn't even think about it. She summoned her cosmic form and fled in the direction away from Luo Yu. Bang! The moment the girl fled, Luo Yu's jade-like hand pinched the air. In the space around the girl, countless ice crystals appeared and condensed into an oval-shaped ice ball. The girl was trapped in the ice ball. No matter how she used all kinds of divine abilities, she couldn't shake the ice ball at all. What frightened the girl even more was that the ice ball was rapidly shrinking. No! The girl let out a shrill scream. In the end, the ice ball was compressed into a small dot and was annihilated into powder. As for the girl, her body and soul were annihilated along with the ice ball. As for the cosmic image that the young woman had just summoned, it let out a mournful wail as it too collapsed and disappeared. It only took Luo Yu 3 breaths to take care of the girl and the 10,000 elite troops. From this, it could be seen how big the gap between the two was. The continent emperor was so frightened that he fled in panic toward Huangju. Right now, Huangju was the only one within Yuhua City who had the power to fight against Luo Yu. As long as he joined forces with Huangju, Luo Yu might not be able to kill them. Suddenly, the continent emperor stopped and stared at the beautiful figure in front of him. Ziyang of the Xin clan. The continent emperor's pupils shrank into needles. He naturally recognized the beautiful woman who blocked his way. The moment the continent emperor fled, Ziyang in the divine chariot also moved under Zhuowen's command. Continent emperor, where do you think you're going? Ziyang raised her head slightly and stared at the continent emperor with her beautiful eyes. She spoke slowly, but her tone was extremely cold. Great clan emperor, save me. The continent emperor roared and immediately summoned his defying ancient celestial body and blasted it towards Ziyang, while he rushed toward Huangju. You're just an early-stage defying ancient celestial body. Die! Ziyang sneered and summoned her defying ancient celestial body, which collided with the continent emperor's defying ancient celestial body. Rumble! As soon as the two defying ancient celestial bodies collided, the continent emperor's defying ancient celestial body was sent flying, and the huge starlight world was immediately shattered. The giant that held up the starlight world knelt on the ground with a painful expression. At the same time, Ziyang blocked the continent emperor again and fought with him. Instead of saying that the two were fighting, it was more like a one-sided slaughter. The gap between the continent emperor and Ziyang was too big. The two were not on the same level at all. Not far away, Huangju's face turned even paler when he saw this scene. He naturally knew that Ziyang and Zhuowen had a close relationship. However, he did not expect that even Luo Yu would stand on Zhuowen's side. The Yuhua clan had no chance of winning this battle. Chapter 4468. No! Zhou Huang let out a sorrowful cry. His Tianling acupoint had been hit by Ziyang's palm, and his entire body had been torn apart. A tiny divine soul figure emitting golden light flew out of Zhou Huang's body and fled into the distance. Divine soul, sword essence. A cold voice sounded. Just as the tiny divine soul figure flew into the air, a purple-gold sword essence pierced through the air and pierced the tiny divine soul figure. You You. Zhou Huang's divine soul figure stared at the young man on the sacred chariot in the distance, his eyes full of hatred. With an unwilling roar, his divine soul collapsed with a loud rumble. After destroying Zhou Huang's divine soul, Zhuowen still stood with his hands behind his back, his indifferent eyes fixed on Huangju. Swoosh! Luo Ye and Ziyang transformed into two streaks of flowing light that descended behind Zhuowen. They stood there with their bodies bowed, and they seemed like servants. Huangju felt Zhuowen's gaze and felt a chill run down his spine, his whole body trembling uncontrollably. Zhuowen, I'm willing to serve you as my master. Please spare my life. Huangju suddenly knelt down and kowtowed to Zhuowen, begging for mercy. Huangju's kneeling was like a domino effect. All the clansmen of the Nuwa clan also knelt on the ground and kept kowtowing. If you want to live, then make a choice, Zhuowen said slowly from the sacred chariot, his voice cold and emotionless. Huangju's body trembled. His eyes flashed, and he made up his mind. He pointed his right finger at his forehead and offered his divine soul mark. He was already no match for Zhuowen alone. Luo Ye and Ziyang, two experts who were stronger than him, were also present. He knew very well that he was no match for Zhuowen. Not enough. Zhuowen took away Huangju's divine soul mark, shook his head, and said calmly. Huangju's expression changed slightly. He immediately understood what Zhuowen meant. Zhuowen wanted the soul imprints of the entire Nuwa clan. He wanted to take the entire Nuwa clan under his control and make them his slaves. Huangju, my patience is limited. With my current strength, it won't be difficult for me to wipe out your entire clan. Zhuowen spoke once again. However, the words that came out of his mouth were extremely cold and emotionless. Huangju sighed in his heart. Suddenly, he shouted, Everyone, give me your soul imprints. The entire Nuwa city was silent at first. Then, the members of the Nuwa clan offered up their soul imprints, their eyes glazed over. Zhuowen's soul imprints soared into the sky one after another, emitting dazzling golden light, and were absorbed into the depths of his soul. Master! Master! Within Nuwa city, all of the clansmen were kneeling on the ground as they addressed Zhuowen as master. Their voices were vast and mighty, and they were like a ferocious wave that flowed endlessly. Duan Jiping, I was wrong back then. Please, for Consort Yun's sake, spare my life. After completely surrendering, Huangju realized that the murderous intent in Zhuowen's eyes still hadn't subsided. Shocked, he knelt in front of Duan Jiping, took out the Dar Chakra eye from the Starlight World, and handed it to Duan Jiping. Brother Duan, Huangju is yours to deal with. If you want to kill him, I will kill him, Zhuowen said calmly. Duan Jiping closed his eyes and opened them again. The murderous intent in his heart gradually subsided. Huangju, I won't kill you. I want you to use your life and time to atone for your sins to Consort Yun, Duan Jiping said coldly. Huangju hurriedly cowed out. The way he looked at Duan Jiping suddenly became very complicated. After successfully subduing the Nuwa clan, Zhuowen asked Huangju to reorganize the Nuwa clan. Then, he headed for the Luo God Realm. The Luo God Realm was Luo Ye's territory. Now, Luo Ye had recognized Zhuowen as her master. Therefore, when he subdued the Luo God clan, Zhuowen didn't spin too many twists and turns and succeeded easily. After successfully subduing the Luo God Realm and Nuwa Realm, Zhuowen returned to the Purple Jade Realm and began to wait for the news of victory from Elder Lu and Elder Di. A month later, Elder Lu and Elder Di returned to the Purple Jade Realm from other realms. Naturally, they also brought good news. There were a total of 15 higher realms in the 100 outer realms. Except for the Nuwa Realm, the Purple Jade Realm, and the Luo God Realm, the other 12 higher realms had surrendered. Most of the clans in the higher realms had never heard of the Void family. However, they knew clearly about the super realms. When they learned that Elder Lu and Elder Di came from the super realms, these clans in the higher realms gave up resistance and surrendered easily. Young Master Zhua, since the punitive mission has been completed, we should return. On the third day after Elder Lu and Elder Di returned, they bid farewell to Zhuowen and left. Zhuowen didn't urge them to stay. Next, Zhuowen ordered Ziyang and Luoya to take over the ruling rights of the other higher realms. Anyone who resisted was to be killed without mercy. In a short 3 months, Ziyang and Luoya firmly grasped the ruling rights of all the higher realms in their hands. Purple Jade Sacred City, in the center of the Great Shrine. Zhuowen sat on the main seat of the Great Shrine, looking down at the restless crowd below. On both sides of Zhuowen, Ziyang and Luoya stood respectfully, like two most loyal maids. In the 2 rows below, there were cultivators in different clothing styles sitting. There were a total of 13 of them. These 13 were representatives from the other 13 higher realms. At this moment, they were summoned by Zhuowen. They were all nervous and didn't dare to look directly at Zhuowen. During this period, Zhuowen's name had spread throughout the higher realms. This name was like a nightmare, appearing in everyone's mind. In the end, everyone had no choice but to submit to this person. Master, may I know why you've summoned us here? Huang Ju, who was sitting at the front, quickly stood up and asked Zhuowen with cupped fists. Zhuowen's gaze slowly moved down to Huang Ju and asked, Huang Ju, have you ever thought that the Nuar realm will one day become a supreme realm? Huang Ju was stunned and then turned pale with fright. He quickly lowered his head and didn't dare to answer. Zhuowen continued, Speak. You don't have to hide your thoughts in front of me. Huang Ju swallowed and said in a deep voice, Of course I have, but that's impossible. A supreme realm is a divine dragon high up in the sky. Our higher realms can't even hope to reach it. Is there no precedent for a higher realm to be promoted to a supreme realm? Zhuowen asked again. Huang Ju's body trembled slightly and said in a low voice, There is a precedent. Now, the second-ranked supreme realm, the other ghost realm, was promoted from a higher realm to a supreme realm. But what? Zhuowen asked. But it's too difficult. The other ghost realm swallowed the resources of the Panga realm and merged with the Heartless realm and the Xuannong realm to finally reach this step. Huang Ju said with a wry smile. In his view, the history of the other ghost realm's development was the history of the birth of miracles. He didn't think that it was possible to replicate the other ghost realm now. I can make you a supreme realm, as long as you give me time. Zhuowen said softly with the corners of his mouth raised slightly. His words were like thunder that exploded in everyone's ears and shocked everyone. What? Master, are you joking? Huang Ju said in disbelief. Luoya and Ziyang revealed surprised expressions as well. This was the first time they had heard such words from Zhuowen. The first step is that the 15 higher realms must be merged. Remember, I'm talking about merging, not joining forces. Only by merging can we have the possibility of advancing to a supreme realm. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about. Zhuowen said indifferently. Merge? Below. Everyone was in an uproar. They whispered to each other and discussed animatedly. The higher realms had been fighting each other for countless years and had never thought of merging. Now, Zhuowen suddenly proposed such a method, which shocked everyone and made them feel disbelief. Chapter 4469. Is there anyone here who disagrees? Zhuowen sat on the main seat, his entire body exuding a wild and domineering aura as he looked down at the people below him. The people who were originally discussing animatedly were all silent like cicadas in winter when they sensed Zhuowen's terrifying aura. Now, they were horrified to realize that they, the representatives of the higher realms, were in fact firmly under the control of the young man in front of them. For countless years, the higher realms had been fighting with each other, and the flames of war had been everywhere. The matter of a merger was naturally a fantasy. But now, the young man in front of them had completely conquered all the higher realms with his unparalleled strength and methods. If he took action, there was really a possibility that the 15 higher realms could merge. Everyone, once the 15 higher realms merge and finally transform into a super realm, all of you who participated in today's decision will be forever recorded in the annals of history. In the long river of history, your names will shine and be remembered by people. Zhuan's tone became gentle. He knew very well that the way to control people should be a combination of hardness and gentleness. If one was too hard, it would be easy to break, and if one was too soft, it would be easy to break. Only by combining hardness and gentleness could one truly control people. Sure enough, the people who had been somewhat resistant to Zhuan's suggestion gradually calmed down. Zhuan's last sentence had become a huge temptation to them. Leave their names in history and be remembered forever. Who wouldn't want that? Just as Zhuan had said, if the merger of the 15 higher realms could really become a super realm, they would be the greatest contributors. I agree with Master's suggestion. Ziyang stood up and knelt in front of Zhuan, her eyes filled with undisguised admiration. I also agree. Luoyu was not to be outdone and also knelt down. I agree. I agree. Everyone in the hall knelt down in unison. Zhuan looked down at the people kneeling in front of him and narrowed his eyes slightly. At this moment, he felt the boundless taste of supreme power. He finally understood why people would chase after power for their entire lives. It was because this taste was too delicious. All of a sudden, Zhuan's eyes became clear, and he was shocked. In that instant, he had actually been immersed in the whirlpool of power for a moment. If he didn't wake up in time, it would give birth to an inner demon. At that time, it would be really troublesome. Ziyang, Luoyu, I'll leave the merging of the higher realms to you. Zhuan's expression was gloomy. He instructed Ziyang and Luoyu before hurriedly leaving the hall. Back in his room, Zhuan sat cross-legged and began to practice the primordial meditation. It was only after the inner demons in his body had been completely wiped clean by the primordial meditation that he slowly woke up. That was really dangerous. I didn't expect that an inner demon would be born in my body at that moment. Zhuan heaved a sigh of relief, but there was still some lingering fear in his heart. Looks like it's mainly because I'm advancing too quickly. My foundation isn't completely stable yet, and my temperament isn't perfect yet. Looks like I won't be able to increase my cultivation for a while. Zhuan muttered to himself. Compared to other cultivators, the speed at which he increased his cultivation could be said to be terrifying. He understood that he shouldn't be in a hurry to increase his cultivation. Instead, he should start to train his temperament. Otherwise, if he continued, there would be a huge problem in his cultivation. Just as well, I can use this time to consolidate my cultivation while planning the merging of the higher realms. Zhuowen's eyes flashed with a bright light as he looked outside the window. Time gradually passed, and in the blink of an eye, more than 2 years had passed. In these 2 years, Zhuowen didn't cultivate even once. Instead, he spent all his energy on merging the higher realms. Through his efforts, the merging of 15 higher realms had already achieved initial results. First, he had to unify the people. 15 different realms. Each region had different customs, culture, power, and so on. In the beginning, the people's hearts weren't united, and there were even many places that faced strong resistance. However, Zhuowen didn't take tough measures. Instead, he used a subtle way to gradually guide the people's hearts and change the views of many creatures. Moreover, he tried his best to promote trade between the different realms, so that the different races of the 15 different realms gradually got used to each other. In the end, the majority of the people stood on Zhuowen's side. Secondly, there was the connection of the realms. In the past 2 years, Zhuowen had gathered all the elite formation masters in 15 high-tier realms and started to build teleportation formations in each realm. Almost every city in each realm had more than 3 digits of transmission arrays. They could transmit up to hundreds of thousands of people at a time. And the one who took the most credit was the Thunder Array clan. Ever since Zhuowen settled down in Zixian's sacred city, he passed on all his experience in formations to the Jiuyuan. And after the Jiuyuan had succeeded in learning, he returned to the Thunder Array clan and became the new clan leader of the Thunder Array clan. Therefore, the Thunder Array clan had used up all their manpower and resources to build countless net-like transmission arrays this time. In the end, it was to improve their foundation and increase their battle strength. Zhuowen knew that if a higher realm wanted to transform into a super realm, not only did it have to have a vast territory that reached the minimum standard, but it also had to have enough true experts. Most importantly, it had to have high-level experts. For example, the weakest super realm had at least one expert of the law phenomenon of heaven and earth level. Now, there were no experts of this level in the 15 higher realms. Zhuowen knew that he had to cultivate such an expert to become the king of this new super realm. In the future, the 15 higher realms will no longer exist and will be replaced by the Kanglan realm. In the future, the Kanglan realm will become a new super realm, or even an invincible realm. At the peak of a mountain that towered into the clouds, Zhuowen stood with his hands behind his back as he looked down at the vast territory below him, and he spoke with boundless heroism. Ziyang and Luo Ye stood quietly behind Zhuowen, their beautiful eyes shining with a strange light. Master, we have selected a new batch of geniuses. These juniors have all passed the training that we have jointly designed. They are the proud sons of heaven who have survived the baptism of blood and fire. How do you plan to settle them down? Ziyang cupped his fists and asked Zhuowen in a low voice. Hold a genius martial arts competition. Whoever wins will be able to enter the starlight world of the 7 emotions and 6 desires Saint Lord to cultivate and be personally taught by Wushang. Zhuowen said indifferently. As he learned more, Zhuowen understood the power of the 7 emotions and 6 desires Saint Lord. Although they were both at the defying ancient starlight realm, the 7 emotions and 6 desires Saint Lord was infinitely close to the law phenomenon of heaven and earth. Although he had died many years ago, the starlight world he had left behind was still far more powerful than Ziyang and Luo Ye. Moreover, the time in his world had been accelerated, making it the best tool for the Kanglan domain to nurture the younger generation of geniuses. Chapter 4470. In addition, Zhuowen also passed down the simplified version of the primordial technique. Not only did he want the geniuses with Dao roots in the Kanglan domain to embark on the path of experts, but he also wanted those mortals without Dao roots to embark on this extraordinary path. 90% of the Kanglan domain's population was made up of mortals. If these mortals could cultivate and become experts, then even if the Kanglan domain didn't have a lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert, its foundation wouldn't be any weaker than a super-level domain's. From then on, the Kanglan domain would be the first force that Zhuowen established in the 100 domains outside the domain that belonged to him. XDW8, there were only 2 goals for the Kanglan domain. The first was to continuously develop and break through. The second was to surpass the alternate ghost domain and take revenge for the miserable Panga clan. After the 15 high-level domains were integrated, the Zishuan domain became the center, and the names of the various high-level domains also changed. For example, the Zishuan domain was renamed the Zishuan region, and the Nuwa domain was renamed the Nuwa region. As the core of the Kanglan domain, the Zishuan sacred city was naturally renamed the Kanglan sacred city. At this moment, outside the Kanglan sacred city, Zhuowen sat on the sacred chariot, suspended in midair. Ziyang, Luo Ye, and the other representatives of the higher realms were also standing respectfully below. At the front of the representatives, Moyan Wushang and Duan Jiping stood side by side, while Shan Lingyun and Shi Patian stood on the side. It looked quite funny. Everyone, I need to go to the Xiling domain to deal with some matters. Therefore, I will not be here for a period of time. During my absence, Moyan Wushang and Duan Jiping will jointly manage the Kanglan domain. Zhuowen looked down at the crowd and spoke slowly, his voice full of majesty. Ziyang, Huangju, Luo Ye, and the other representatives looked at each other in dismay, setting off an uproar. Zhuowen's decision was too sudden, and he had not mentioned it before. Moyan Wushang, Duan Jiping, and the others' expressions were normal. They already knew that Zhuowen was going to the Xiling domain. Now that Zhuowen suddenly mentioned it, they were not surprised. At first, Moyan Wushang had planned to go with Zhuowen, but Zhuowen rejected him. Zhuowen was very clear that the task given to him by old man Anshi was of great importance, and it was bound to be dangerous. If he carried out the mission alone, he wouldn't have any worries. If Moyan Wushang followed him, it would distract him. Do you have any objections? Zhuowen spoke again, his voice gradually becoming colder. Master's words, to us, are the true words of the law. How dare we have any objections? Everyone lowered their heads and bowed submissively. Brother Duan, the Kanglan domain will depend on you. Zhuowen looked at Moyan Wushang, Duan Jiping, and the others, and his tone softened. Zhuowen, be careful. If you really encounter danger, don't take it head-on. Do you understand? Moyan Wushang landed in front of Zhuowen and gave him a gentle hug, whispering to him in a soft voice. Zhuowen hugged Moyan Wushang's slender waist and nodded heavily. Wait for me to come back. Miss Wushang is right. Brother Zhuo, sometimes you can't be too stubborn. Duan Jiping walked over and patted Zhuowen's shoulder heavily. Disciple, after going to the Xiling domain, remember to miss me. Shan Lingyun wiped her eyes. Master, don't miss me too much. I'm very happy here with Sister Shan. Anyway, I'm not going back to the outside world. Sherpatian smiled foolishly as he followed behind Shan Lingyun and said thoughtlessly, Little brat, are you tired of the old? I've been so good to you. Now that you've been with this woman for a few days, you've forgotten me? As soon as Sherpatian finished speaking, Xiaohei couldn't help but come out of the outside world. She grabbed Sherpotion's collar with her little claws and dragged him toward the outside world. Woo woo woo. Master Hei, no, I want to be with Sister Shan. Zhuowen didn't pay attention to Xiaohei and Sherpatian. Instead, he instructed Moyan Wushang, Duan Jiping, Shan Lingyun, and the others. Then, he waved his hand and drove the chariot away. With the chariot, Zhuowen didn't need a divine ship to go to the supreme domain. Although there was a terrifying dark ruins between a high-level realm and a super realm, the dark ruins was filled with many dangers. Although the chariot was fast, after entering the dark ruins, its speed was still affected. In order to prevent the dangers that could appear at any time in the dark ruins, Zhuowen deliberately slowed down the chariot, hoping to have enough buffer time to deal with all kinds of dangers. Fortunately, Zhuowen didn't encounter any accidents along the way. Of course, this was mainly due to the speed of the chariot. Every time he discovered many dangers in the dark ruins, Zhuowen would speed up and shake off the dangers in time. Zibo City was the only port city in the Xiling domain that was connected to the dark ruins. It was one of the most prosperous cities in the Xiling domain. Before arriving at Zibo City, Zhuowen put away the chariot and replaced it with an ordinary divine ship. The chariot was too extraordinary. If he openly barged into Zibo City like this, it was inevitable that he would be targeted and cause a lot of trouble. After entering Zibo City, Zhuowen casually found an inn and checked in. In the room, Zhuowen took out Ziyu from the outside world. Bang! Ziyu's limbs were still restrained, and he was originally in a state of coma. With Zhuowen's heavy toss, he immediately woke up. Zhuowen, what are you doing? Ziyu saw Zhuowen and immediately retreated in fear. At the same time, he noticed that he was no longer in the outside world, but in an unfamiliar room. Zhuowen looked down at Ziyu indifferently. Ziyu, let me ask you, do you know the Purple Heaven Sacred Ground? The Purple Heaven Sacred Ground was Zhuowen's destination in the Xiling domain. Elder Anshi had once told him that the furnace of heaven and earth was in the Purple Heaven Sacred Ground. It was now in the custody of the old sect master of the Purple Heaven Sacred Ground, waiting for Elder Anshi's people to come and take it. However, there were too many people eyeing the furnace of heaven and earth. Zhuowen couldn't enter the Purple Heaven Sacred Ground rashly to find the old sect master. He had to enter in an extremely inconspicuous way and then find an opportunity to contact the old sect master. Elder Anshi had warned him that this mission was extremely dangerous, and he had to be very careful. This was because there were lawful embodiment of heaven and earth experts among the people eyeing the furnace of heaven and earth. Purple Heaven Sacred Ground? Of course I know. My family and the Purple Heaven Sacred Ground have been friends for generations. I have a good relationship with many geniuses in the Purple Heaven Sacred Ground, Ziyu suddenly replied proudly. However, he quickly realized something and immediately became vigilant. Why are you asking this? Ziyu saw Zhuan's smile grow wider and wider. Her heart suddenly turned cold. She secretly thought that he was stupid. How could he reveal his relationship with the Purple Heaven Sacred Ground like this? Could it be that this Zhuan in front of her was planning something bad again? Thinking of this, Ziyu's body trembled and she felt unwell. Chapter 4471. Oh, so your family and Purple Heaven Sacred Ground are old friends. Hearing this, the corners of Zhuo Wen's mouth curled into a meaningful arc. Seeing Zhuowen's question, Ziyu revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. Sure enough, this Zhuowen was planning something bad. It was all his fault for speaking so straightforwardly. Yes. Ziyu nodded with difficulty. She had already said it. She couldn't deny it now. He was very clear about Zhuowen's methods. If he could hide anything, he would definitely not have a good ending. Tell me about your family. Zhuowen leisurely sat in his chair. He calmly looked down at Ziyu and asked with a smile. Ziyu felt bitter in his heart, but he didn't dare to disobey Zhuowen's orders. Now he had no choice but to lower his head. My family is an upper-class family in Xiling Divine City. They are ranked in the top 10 among the many forces in the Xiling region. And Purple Heaven's Sacred Ground is... Ziyu slowly explained. Zhuowen listened silently. He had a general understanding of the power distribution in Xiling Divine City. Xiling Divine City's power distribution was not much different from Xiyan Divine City's. The highest level was Xiling Royal Court. There was a powerful king guarding the Royal Court. Under the Royal Court were the 5 sacred grounds. Purple Heaven Sacred Ground was one of the 5 sacred grounds. The Ziyu family behind Ziyu was a force second only to the 5 great families. They could be considered an extremely top force in Xiling Divine City. The reason why the Ziyu family and Purple Heaven Sacred Ground were old friends was that the geniuses of the 2 forces often married. After many generations of marriage, the 2 forces had unknowingly shared honor and disgrace. This was also the reason why the 2 forces became old friends. Ziyu, I'll give you a chance now. As long as you grasp this opportunity, I can set you free. Zhuowen looked down at Ziyu and said leisurely. Ziyu was startled and immediately revealed an excited expression. The time he was imprisoned by Zhuowen was definitely the darkest time of his life. Now that he had a chance to obtain freedom, one could imagine the joy in his heart. But soon, he revealed a vigilant expression and cautiously asked, "Tell me first. I'll think about it again." Zhuowen said coolly, "Very simple. I need to enter the Purple Heaven Sacred Ground, but I don't want to attract attention. So I need you to be the middleman. If you can do it well, I promise to set you free." Ziyu secretly let out a sigh of relief. So was this matter. This was not difficult for Ziyu. It is indeed simple. It's not difficult for me to bring you into the Purple Heaven Sacred Ground without attracting attention. However, why did you enter the Purple Heaven Sacred Ground? Ziyu frowned. You don't have a right to know. Zhuowen spread his hands at Ziyu. What do you mean? Ziyu saw Zhuowen suddenly stretch out his hand and did not return to her senses for a moment. Hand over your soul imprint. This is the only way I can be at ease. Zhuowen said calmly. You, don't go too far. Ziyu angrily said. Don't worry. As long as you do this well, I will return the soul imprint to you. I said that I will give you freedom. I can swear to the heavens on this point. Zhuowen said lightly. Ziyu frowned slightly. She saw Zhuowen's eyes getting colder and colder. Her heart trembled, and she quickly handed over the soul imprint. Zhuowen leisurely put away Ziyu's soul imprint and then released the shackles on her body. Now, you have a certain degree of freedom. Go back to the Ziyu family first. As Zhuowen spoke, his appearance gradually changed and his aura became completely different. Zhuowen's cultivation had reached the level of cosmic dharma. Not only had his strength increased, but his concealment ability had also undergone earth-shaking changes by relying on the Archean primordial mantra. If he completely changed his aura, even a peak starlight level cultivator might not be able to recognize him. In the Ziyu family, the only people who had seen him were Ziyu and Jiho, who had followed Ziyu. Ziyu naturally did not dare to reveal his information. Jiho's cultivation was only at the peak of cosmic dharma, so he could not see through Zhuowen's disguise. Next, Zhuowen and Ziyu boarded the divine ship and headed for Xiling Divine City. For Zhuowen, who was used to riding the chariot, he felt that the speed of the divine ship was too slow. But he also knew that the Xiling Divine region was not like a higher realm. There were too many strong cultivators and terrifying forces everywhere. If he used the chariot without permission, he could not guarantee that he would not be targeted. Xiling Divine City was located at the core of the Xiling Divine region. Even the divine ship took a full 10 days to arrive at Xiling Divine City. Xiling Divine City's magnificence was not inferior to Shiyan Divine City. The huge divine city appeared on the horizon like an immortal giant beast. Many divine warships were flying in and out of the huge divine city. It was a bustling scene. Soon, the divine ship stopped at the city gate. After putting away the divine ship, Zhuowen silently followed behind Xiling. There was a long queue at the city gate. There were rich merchants who had come to do business, young cultivators who had just arrived, and all kinds of people. Is this young Master Ziyu? While Ziyu and Zhuowen were waiting in the queue, a patrol team riding a divine chariot passed by the city gate and suddenly stopped. The leader of the group was a young man clad in dazzling silver armor. He held a silver spear in his hand, and his handsome face was filled with a confident smile. The youth immediately jumped off his divine chariot when he saw Ziyu. He came before Ziyu and cupped his hands in greeting. Brother Dingjia, what a coincidence to meet you here. Ziyu looked at the youth and smiled brightly. She went forward to greet him. Haha, I saw you from afar, but I wasn't sure. Now that I'm closer, it really is you, young Master Ziyu. The youth called Dingjia laughed and continued. Young Master Ziyu, let's go. With your status, you don't need to line up. Just follow me into the city. Ziyu glanced at Zhuowen. Seeing that the latter did not object, she followed behind Dingjia. Many people in the long queue at the city gate were envious, but no one dared to object. Dingjia was the most senior guardian of the city gate. He naturally had the right to let anyone in. Young Master Ziyu, this is? Dingjia led the way in front while his gaze fell on Zhuowen, who was following behind. Ziyu smiled faintly. This is my friend, Zhuowen. She is also my savior. Hearing this, Dingjia looked at Zhuowen curiously. Ziyu's whereabouts had been unknown for some time, but there had been a sensation in Xiling Divine City for a while. There were even many versions of rumors. Now it seemed that Ziyu had indeed encountered some trouble. Chapter 4472. Brother Zhuo, let's get to know each other. I am Dingjia, a disciple of the Purple Heaven's sacred ground. Dingjia cupped his hands at Zhuowen and spoke rather warmly. Zhuowen returned the greeting, but didn't speak. His attitude was rather cold. Brother Dingjia, my friend is a man of few words. Don't mind him. Ziyu laughed. Dingjia waved his hand. Gongzi Ziyu is joking. Dingjia invited the two of them to sit in the pavilion above the city gate for a while before Ziyu said goodbye. Zhuowen, the 5 sacred grounds have always been isolated from the rest of the world and rarely come into contact with the outside world. If you want to enter the Purple Heaven sacred ground, you must be led by a disciple of the Purple Heaven sacred ground. Ziyu said. Zhuowen looked at Ziyu in surprise. Isn't your Ziyu family a family friend of the Purple Heaven sacred ground? Even you need to be led in by a disciple of the purple heaven, sacred ground? Ziyu smiled bitterly. Although our Ziyu family can enter without reporting, the purple heaven, sacred grounds terrain is extremely complicated and filled with traps. Our Ziyu family doesn't dare to go in alone. In the past, I asked Brother Ding Jia to lead me into the purple heaven, sacred ground. This time, I plan to ask him for help. Zhuo nodded. The two of them quickly arrived at the Ziyu family residence. The Ziyu family residence was located in the bustling core area of Xiling Divine City. According to Ziyu, the Ziyu family was a force of martial arts and commerce. Not only were they prosperous in martial arts, but they were also very good in commerce. The talented juniors of the Ziyu family would focus on martial arts from a young age and work hard for the future. The less talented juniors would be trained to become merchants and take over the family's businesses. After generations of hard work, the Ziyu family's businesses covered most of the Xiling region and became a business empire. It was precisely because of the Ziyu family's integration of martial arts and commerce that they could become the strongest force below the Xiling court and the 5 sacred grounds. Ziyu's return to the Ziyu family immediately caused a commotion. The servants and maids were all crazy and competed to tell each other, almost causing a commotion. Zhuan looked at the servants and maids strangely. It was just the return of the young master. Was there a need to be so excited? Ziyu said awkwardly, because I'm the only child of the family's 7th generation. I've been taken care of by everyone since I was a child. They can't bear to see me suffer any grievances. I've been missing for so long this time. They must be really worried. Zhuan looked speechlessly at Ziyu. It seemed that this fellow had grown up with a golden spoon in her mouth. No wonder her temperament was so much worse than Suzhou's. She was even a bit childish. This should have a lot to do with the situation in the family. Grandson, where's my grandson? Son, you're finally back. I was so worried. Cousin, you've been missing for so long. Do you know that I've been crying every day? Not long after Ziyu and Zhuan waited in the living room, countless sharp voices suddenly came from outside. Immediately after, the earth quaked and the mountains shook as countless footsteps rushed in. Zhuan looked over curiously and was immediately shocked by the scene in front of him. A group of women rushed into the living room like wolves and tigers. Among them, there were white-haired old women, charming young married women, and even young girls in their prime. After these women rushed into the living room like a swarm of bees, they rushed towards Ziyu and completely drowned her. Zhuan subconsciously retreated a distance. Seeing Ziyu being pushed and shoved by this group of women, he suddenly felt some pity for Ziyu. Everyone calm down. Brother Ziyu is already foaming at the mouth. If you continue to pull him like this, he'll lose his life. Zhuan saw that Ziyu's condition was getting worse, so he coughed dryly and quickly reminded them. Shut up. Suddenly, the group of women stopped and turned their heads in unison. They glared angrily at Zhuan and shouted in unison. Zhuan quickly covered his face and distanced himself. The pity in his eyes intensified. These women of Ziyu's family were all extremely fierce. He couldn't afford to offend them. Brother Zhuo, save. Ziyu struggled hard and extended her hand towards Zhuan, wanting to ask for help. However, she was quickly pulled back by the group of women. Zhuo, on the other hand, revealed an expression of helplessness. It had to be said that he was completely helpless against these women. Enough. There are outsiders here. How can you be like this? Suddenly, an old and dignified voice came from outside the living room. The group of women who had surrounded Ziyu immediately became silent. They all stood solemnly, and their behavior became dignified. Zhuan was a little speechless. Were all the women of the Ziyu family so fickle? This change was too fast. She could switch between being a shrew and a lady so easily. His gaze fell on the outside of the living room. There, a burly old man slowly walked in. The old man had white hair and a youthful complexion. His face was white and beardless, and he was extremely handsome. Family head. When the old man came in, all the women bowed respectfully. They were dignified and virtuous. Zhuowen glanced at Ziyu, who was lying limp on the chair and on the verge of death. He shook his head inwardly. The old man nodded and said, "You all leave first. If you want to catch up, there will be time later." "Yes." The group of women bowed again and walked out of the living room. After all the women left, the old man came to Ziyu and revealed a kind smile. "Ziyu, it's great that you're back. Do you know how worried grandfather was about you?" Ziyu's consciousness was still a little fuzzy. Her words were vague. Zhuowen nodded inwardly. There was finally someone normal in the Ziyu family. This old man was obviously more sensible than the women. But soon, the old man's beautiful image in Zhuowen's mind collapsed. The old man lifted Ziyu's collar and said loudly, "Ziyu, I told you to wake up. Didn't you hear me?" Boom, boom, boom. As he spoke, the old man's right hand swung wildly and began to swing Ziyu left and right. "Wake up! Wake up!" The old man roared in disappointment as he swung Ziyu. Zhuowen silently watched this scene. His heart was very complicated, and he didn't know what to say. "Ah, grandfather, I'm awake. I'm awake." Ziyu was stimulated by the sharp pain. She immediately woke up and screamed in horror. The old man stopped, and his serious expression returned. He put Ziyu on the seat, and his face showed a kind smile again. Looking at the old man's kind smile, Zhuowen's mouth couldn't help but twitch. "I am Ziwuji, the current family head of the Ziyu family. Little brother, may I know your name?" The old man smiled at Zhuowen and asked. Zhuowen cupped his fists and said, "I'm Zhuowen Yinxue, a good friend of Brother Ziyu's. Greetings to family head Z. Please take a seat." Ziwuji sat on the main seat and spoke to Zhuowen in a friendly manner. After Zhuowen sat down, Ziwuji looked at Ziyu and said, "Ziyu, you really don't know any rules. Introduce your friends to me? And where have you been all this time?" "Marquis G said that you were captured. Is that true?" Ziyu returned to her senses and quickly said, "Grandfather is wise. I was indeed captured." "All right, what did Marquis G say?" Chapter 4473. Ziwuji glanced at Ziyu and faintly said, "Jiho didn't say who caught you. He only said that you were caught. If you say it, he said that you will be killed." Ziyu scratched her head and was a little embarrassed. She was about to say that it was true when Zhuowen suddenly interrupted. "Family head Z may not know, but the person who caught Brother Ziyu is someone called Zhuowen. This person is a rogue cultivator." Zhuowen suddenly said. Ziwuji glanced at Zhuowen with great interest. He wasn't surprised as he asked, "Little friend Yinxue, do you know Zhuowen?" "I have," Zhuowen faintly said. Ziyu hurriedly said, "Grandfather, I haven't introduced him to you yet. I was able to escape successfully this time, mainly because of Yinxue's efforts." Next, Ziyu began to narrate the story that Zhuowen had already prepared for her. Ziwuji thought for a while and suddenly stood up. He cupped his hands gratefully to Zhuowen. "Yinxue, thank you for saving my beloved grandson." Zhuowen waved his hand. "Brother Ziyu and I hit it off at first sight. It is only right that I save him. Yinxue is too modest." Ziwuji smiled. Next, Ziwuji, Ziyu, and Zhuowen casually chatted for a while. Then he ordered the servants to arrange a first-class room for Zhuowen. After Ziyu walked out of the hall, a group of women who had been waiting outside once again kidnapped Ziyu like wolves and tigers. Ziwuji pretended not to see and quickly left the hall. Zhuowen glanced at Ziyu sympathetically. He did not dare to stay here for long and hurriedly left with the servants. After walking out of the hall, Zhuowen heard Ziyu's miserable screams from afar. He immediately quickened his steps. The next day, Ziyu knocked on Zhuowen's door. Zhuowen opened the door and saw that Ziyu had puffy eyes, dark circles, and a haggard face. This gave Zhuowen a fright. "Brother Ziyu, what did you experience last night?" Zhuowen asked in surprise. Ziyu's face was still haggard. She revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. "During the time that I was missing, my mother, grandmother, and aunts were all too worried. Last night, they dragged me away and talked to me for the whole night. Only now did they let me out. So I came here directly." Hearing this, Zhuowen's eyes became even more sympathetic. He could imagine what this guy had gone through last night. It's been hard on you to have so many female elders. Sometimes it's really pretty good. Zhuowen hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he did not dare to say anything about those women. He was really afraid that Ziyu would gossip, and then those women would come to his door to talk to him. Ziyu rolled her eyes. Pretty good? Are you sure? However, he did not dare to complain. After all, he was still quite afraid of Zhuowen. Did you come to me today to prepare to go to the Purple Heaven sacred ground? Zhuowen asked casually. Cough, cough. I'm afraid that won't do. I just came back and still need to deal with many things. Only after dealing with these things will it not be too sudden for me to take you to the Purple Heaven sacred ground. Ziyu smiled bitterly. Zhuowen nodded. Ziyu was very thoughtful. Going to the Purple Heaven sacred ground as soon as she came back was indeed easy to be suspected. If that's the case, you don't have to come personally. You just need to send someone to inform me. Zhuowen said lightly. Apart from this, my grandfather is willing to give you a part of our Ziyu family's treasured cultivation land to thank you. Ziyu looked at him strangely. Zhuowen was startled. He did not expect Ziwuji to be so generous. He had heard Ziyu say that their Ziyu family was as rich as a country. The treasured cultivation land they owned was second only to the Xiling imperial court in the Xiling region. No matter how rich the Ziyu family was, giving away a part of their treasured cultivation land was too extravagant. You don't have to doubt this. My grandfather is a man of his word. If he says he will give it to you, he will definitely give it to you. I just don't know what kind of treasured cultivation land it is. Come with me now. My grandfather is waiting for you in the hall. Ziyu said. With that, Ziyu led Zhuowen to the reception hall. When they arrived at the reception hall, Ziwuji was already sitting in the main seat waiting for them. Little friend Nianxue should know why I called you here, right? Ziwuji stood up and smiled. Brother Zi, you told me that you wanted to give me a treasured cultivation land? Zhuowen asked uncertainly. Yes. You also know that Ziyu is the only heir of our Ziyu family. He hasn't married and had children yet. How can he die like this? Fortunately, you saved him. Just based on this, I shouldn't be stingy. Ziwuji smiled. Grandfather, which treasured cultivation land are you going to give me? Zi suddenly asked. Fire pond. Ziwuji said lightly. It's actually a fire pond. Ziyu's pupil shrank, and she could not help but suck in a breath. Brother Ziyu, is there a problem with this fire pond? Zhuowen asked with a smile. Ziyu hurriedly shook her head. No problem. This fire pond is one of the top 5 treasured cultivation lands of our Ziyu family. It's an extremely powerful treasured cultivation land. Zhuowen nodded. His eyes showed that he was deep in thought. Let's go. I'll take you there personally. Ziwuji waved his hand and smiled at Zhuowen. Zi wanted to follow, but Ziwuji glared at her and said, You don't have to follow. It's enough for me to take little friend Nianxue. Ziyu's expression changed slightly, but she did not dare to disobey Ziwuji's orders. Ziwuji took out the divine ship and invited Zhuowen to board. Then, he steered the divine ship without saying a word. Zhuowen stood behind the deck and silently looked at Ziwuji's back. His eyes gradually narrowed. 2 hours later, the divine ship landed in a volcanic basin. The basin was vast, stretching as far as the eye could see. Within it stood numerous gigantic volcanoes, each of which was constantly erupting terrifying magma. In the center of the basin, there was a huge pond. This pond was very strange. Terrifying flames burned in the sparkling water. These flames were in a liquid form and looked very strange. This is the fire pond. Little friend Nianxue, this fire pond belongs to you in the future. Ziwuji landed beside the pond. His indifferent eyes stared at Zhuowen. A cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Zhuowen did not speak. Instead, he stared at Ziwuji. Master Zi, do you have something to say to me? Zhuowen said lightly. Ziwuji was silent for a moment. Your intuition is very sharp. Then why did you come out with me alone? Zhuowen was silent. He only looked at Ziwuji indifferently. When Ziwuji deliberately sent Ziyu away, He knew that Ziwuji's gift to the fire pond was fake. He probably had other motives. Little friend Yinxue, can we be honest with each other? Can you tell me your real name? And why did you come to the Ziyu family? Ziwuji's eyes suddenly became sharp. His voice also became extremely heavy. Zhuowen said lightly, Master Z, I'm afraid I can't tell you these things. But I can tell you that I didn't come for the Ziyu family. You can rest assured. Aren't you afraid that I will kill you here? Only the threat of a dead person is the least. Ziwuji's eyes were indifferent. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying aura erupted from his body. An undisguised killing intent burst out. Chapter 4474. Zhuowen's eyes were already calm. He said lightly, Family head Z, you can't kill me. Zhuowen had a treasure like the chariot of chariots. If he really wanted to run, even an lawful embodiment of heaven and earth cultivator would not be able to catch up, let alone Ziwuji, who is only half a step into the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Ziwuji frowned slightly. He did not expect that Zhuowen could be so calm in the face of his murderous intent. Did this kid really think that he could not kill him? The two of them confronted each other for a long time. Finally, Ziwuji completely withdrew his aura. He looked deeply at Zhuowen and said, No matter what your purpose is for coming to my Ziyu family, I can ignore it. But if you dare to harm my family and Ziyu, I will never let you go. After that, Ziwuji snorted coldly and left in a huff. I, Ziwuji, am a man of my word. This fire pond is your reward for sending Ziyu back to the Ziyu family. In the sky, Ziwuji's vast and distant voice came from afar. It was endless and exploded out of thin air. Zhuowen shook his head and laughed. A trace of admiration for Ziwuji rose in his heart. This old man was obviously suspicious of him, but he still kept his promise. Ordinary people would not be able to do that. The fire pond? I wonder how effective it is. Zhuowen's gaze fell on the fire pond water in front of him. His eyes flashed with excitement. He could feel that the energy in the fire pond was much richer and purer than the Shinshu mountain spring. Zhuowen jumped into the fire pond, and a wave of scorching heat invaded his body. It flowed through his meridians and into his limbs and bones in an unending stream. In an instant, Zhuowen's whole body turned red. That was the sign of his blood vessels expanding to their limits. So hot. The energy in this fire pond is so violent. Zhuowen was shocked. He hurriedly circulated the primordial chant. After the primordial divine power circulated in his body dozens of times, his body finally adapted to the terrifying heat of the fire pond. Boom, boom. While Zhuowen was immersed in cultivating in the fire pool, the huge volcanoes around the fire pool all stopped erupting magma in tacit agreement. It seems that the fire pond's energy mainly comes from the geothermal energy in the depths of the surrounding volcanoes. When Zhuowen saw this scene, his eyes revealed a look of understanding. Time gradually passed. In a huge basin, the volcanoes quieted down. In the end, not a single volcano erupted magma. The energy in the depths of the basin was basically absorbed by the fire pond and transmitted into Zhuowen's body. The flames on the fire pond were completely extinguished. Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes. Dazzling divine light burst out from the depths of his eyes. Roar, roar, roar. He leapt up, the bones and tendons in his body cracking like that of a wild beast. An unprecedentedly powerful aura burst out of his body. Chapter 4475. Brother Dingjia is right. Old Sect Master status is really too high. It's really impossible for us to meet. Ziyu smiled bitterly and helplessly. Her eyes moved. Old Sect Master rarely appears. Do you know where he has been in seclusion recently? Dingjia frowned. He felt that Ziyu was a bit talkative today. Moreover, the topic was directed towards Old Sect Master. But he didn't feel suspicious. He honestly said, Old Sect Master is elusive. It's impossible for us to meet him. As for where he is in seclusion, I've heard of it. Where is it? Ziyu hurriedly asked. Inside Shenshao Peak. Ding Jia whispered. Shenshao Peak? Ziyu raised her eyebrows. She naturally knew about Shenshao Peak. It was the main peak of Purple Heaven's sacred ground. The real big shots of Purple Heaven's sacred ground basically all lived in Shenshao Peak. As the main peak, Shenshao Peak was naturally the largest peak in Purple Heaven's sacred ground. It was many times taller than the other peaks. Brother Dingjia, Shenshao Peak is so huge. Do you know the specific location? Ziyu asked again. Dingjia frowned. Brother Ziyu, your question is a bit difficult. I don't even have the qualifications to enter Shenshao Peak. How would I know where old sect master is in seclusion? Haha, I was rude. Ziyu laughed and glanced at Zhuan. Zhuan nodded slightly. Ziyu heaved a sigh of relief. This is Shenshao Peak. Snow Moon Peak is tens of thousands of kilometers away in the northwest corner of Shenshao Peak. We can reach it quickly if we fly. Suddenly, Ding Jia stopped. His gaze landed on an unusually large mountain in front of him, and he revealed a look of awe and envy. This peak shot straight into the sky like an earth-shattering pillar. It was surrounded by 7 colored clouds. It was like an ancient, immortal mountain, displaying infinite majesty and nobility. It's worthy of being the main peak of the sacred ground. This power is indeed extraordinary. Ziyu's gaze also fell on Shenshao Peak. She clicked her tongue in wonder. Zhuan's eyes suddenly turned cold. He found that the mark old man Anshi had left on him was giving off a strong burning sensation. It was as if a red-hot iron had been ruthlessly branded onto his body, causing him to feel a burning pain. Hey, why are you in a daze? It's time to go, Ding Jia said coldly when he saw Zhuan standing there in a daze. His face was filled with displeasure. Zhuan came back to his senses. He glanced at Ding Jia, but did not say anything and followed him. If it weren't for young Master Zio, I wouldn't even bother with an itinerant cultivator with no background like you. How can he be so stunned after seeing the divine firmament peak? He's really inexperienced. Ding Jia led the way in front, but his mouth was muttering in dissatisfaction. Ding Jia was already very dissatisfied that you wanted to bring Zhuan here. Now that he saw that Zhuan was so inexperienced, he was even more displeased. Zhuan frowned slightly. He didn't seem to have offended Ding Jia. Why was Ding Jia so dissatisfied with him? However, Zhuan did not say anything. He just silently followed behind. He did not want to cause trouble in Purple Heaven's sacred ground this time. That would only cause unnecessary trouble. After all, he came to Purple Heaven's sacred ground this time with an important mission. The moment Ding Jia and Zhuan left Shenshao Peak, an imposing and powerful figure sat cross-legged in the depths of a magnificent palace at the peak of Shenshao Peak. This figure looked to be a middle-aged man about 50 years old. He was dressed in a gorgeous purple robe, and his entire body was filled with an extremely terrifying aura. This aura was like an incomparably powerful invisible python that shot out in all directions, tearing the surrounding space into pieces. Suddenly, the middle-aged man slowly opened his eyes. The air around the palace suddenly stagnated, as if time and space had stopped because of this. His eyes seemed to contain a starry sky, resplendent and powerful. Old man Anshi's aura? That old man has finally sent someone here? The middle-aged man spoke faintly. His voice was like a sudden clap of thunder that exploded in the entire palace. He slowly raised his eyes and looked at the space in front of him. There, a huge furnace was suspended in midair. This furnace was dazzling with golden light. The top was oval and the bottom was square. In the center, there were 9 brilliant dragon heads that were spitting out blazing golden flames. The endless golden flames turned into a terrifying sea of fire in midair. They lingered around the furnace and began to spiral rapidly. Countless golden flames flew out, looking magnificent and gorgeous. It's time to return the heaven and earth furnace to Old Man Anshi. However, this furnace is of great importance. I need to test the person sent by Old Man Anshi. The middle-aged man slowly stood up. A terrifying aura exploded, and the surrounding space was completely torn apart, turning into pieces of debris. Withdraw. The middle-aged man gently stretched out his right hand. The golden flames around the heaven and earth furnace converged and then turned into a golden streamer that quickly entered the middle-aged man's sleeve. At the same time, the middle-aged man stepped lightly with his right foot and disappeared into thin air. The Snow Moon Peak was bustling with activity today. Streams of light fell like rain and gathered on the peak one after another. When Zhuowen and the other two approached Snow Moon Peak, there were servants who came to receive them. Zhuowen casually glanced at Snow Moon Peak and secretly compared it with Divine Cloud Peak in his heart. He realized that the difference between the two was like heaven and earth. Snow Moon Peak was far inferior to Divine Cloud Peak in terms of appearance, size, and grandeur. The three of them were led by a young man called Ayong. He was one of the male servants of Snow Moon Peak and was responsible for receiving servants who came to attend the birthday banquet. The location of the master's birthday banquet is in Snow Moon Hall. You can go straight ahead. I'm not qualified to enter Snow Moon Hall. Ayong bowed and said to Zhuowen and the other two with an apologetic smile on his face. We know. You can leave first. Ding Jia waved his hand and said in an indifferent tone. After Ayong left, Ding Jia skillfully passed through the courtyards and arrived in front of a huge palace. In front of the palace, there was a huge stone tablet with the words Snow Moon Hall written on it. At this moment, Snow Moon Hall was extraordinarily lively. Groups of servants were walking in and out, carrying delicious food. In the middle of the palace, a group of beautiful and graceful dancers were dancing to the melodious sound of a zither. On both sides of the dancers, there were rows of spacious and gorgeous tables. On the tables sat cultivators who were dressed in brocade and had strong auras. These cultivators were young and old. They were all high-spirited and were exchanging toasts. Yo, isn't this young Master Zio? Didn't I hear that you went missing? They actually popped out again. I think they must have gone somewhere to have fun. Huh, young Master Zio, come and sit with us. Let's have a good chat. After Ziyu, Ding Jia, and the other two entered Snow Moon Hall, many people called out to them. Many people recognized Ziyu. Ziyu greeted them one by one, but did not go over. Instead, she looked at Zhuowen. Zhuowen was expressionless as he sat in an inconspicuous corner. Ziyu hurriedly followed and sat beside Zhuowen. Ziyu's action immediately attracted the attention of many people in the hall. Many gazes involuntarily fell on Zhuowen. Chapter 4476. Who is this person? Why is Zio Gongzi so humble towards this person? He's actually following behind this person like a follower. This person looks unfamiliar. I've never seen him before in Xiling City. I don't think he's a disciple of a big force. There was an uproar in Shuiyu Palace. Ziyu's reputation in Xiling City was not weak. His family was second only to Xiling Court and the 5 sacred lands. He was considered a leading figure among the younger generation in the Divine City. But now, Ziyu's attitude towards Zhuowen puzzled many people. After all, Zhuowen's appearance and temperament were too ordinary. Ding Jia was equally puzzled. He quickly walked to Ziyu and said in a low voice, Gongzi Zio, Shui Shixiang has already prepared a good seat for you after knowing that you're here. Zi did not speak. She looked at Zhuowen as if asking for his opinion. Since they prepared a good seat for you, go ahead. Don't worry about me. Zhuowen lightly raised the crystalline and translucent jade cup in his hand and took a sip before he spoke casually. Ziyu hesitated for a moment, but finally excused herself from Zhuowen and followed Ding Jia. Before they left, Ding Jia looked coldly at Zhuowen and said in a low voice, Zhuowen, I don't know what means you used to win Zio Gongzi's trust, but one must know one's limits. Since Zio Gongzi has given you a chance to enter Purple Heaven's sacred ground, you should be content. Don't try to obtain more. After all, your status is different from Zio Gongzi's. Zhuowen looked at Ding Jia indifferently. He sneered in his heart, but did not refute. No one's limits? Different status? If Ding Jian knew that Ziyu had already acknowledged him as his master and respected him like a god, would he still say such words? Suddenly, there was an intense clamor from the front of the palace. Zhuowen looked up and saw a handsome youth in feathered robes and a high crown walking out slowly from the inner palace. The youth was in high spirits and was surrounded by stars. He became the center of attention the moment he walked out of the inner palace. It's Brother Xueyu. What a powerful qi. It seems like Brother Xueyu's secluded meditation has been fruitful. This is a double blessing. No wonder Xueyu organized such a grand banquet. It's really worthy of celebration. In the banquet hall, most of the disciples of the Purple Heaven Holy Land stood up. They all held their jade cups and went up to Xueyu to offer their blessings. Zhuowen glanced at the young man who was surrounded by the crowd. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well. Xueyu did not restrain her aura, so he could tell at a glance that her cultivation level should have just reached the late-stage cosmic Dharma stage. This level of cultivation might be considered decent in Violet Caltrip City, but it wasn't enough to catch Zhuowen's eye. Chapter 4477. Zhuowen had been paying attention to Xueyu's movements. When he saw Xueyu and Xueyu talking in a low voice and deliberately pointing at him, his heart sank. He didn't need to think to guess that Blood Beauty had probably told Xueyu the truth of Ziyu's kidnapping. After all, other than Su Zhou and the others, Old Man Ming Deng, Blood Beauty, and Yun Shenzi also knew that he had kidnapped Ziyu. This time, he had really miscalculated. He didn't expect Old Man Ming Deng, Blood Beauty, and Yun Shenzi to come to Purple Heaven's sacred ground and participate in Xueyu's birthday celebration. No, how can things be so coincidental? Zhuowen's expression suddenly turned cold. He felt that something wasn't right. Old Man Ming Deng, Blood Beauty, and Yun Shenzi were all expert from other super realms. Xueyu was only an ordinary core disciple of Purple Heaven's sacred ground. With his face, it was impossible for him to invite Old Man Ming Deng and the others to come all the way here. Unless, Zhuowen seemed to think of something, and his expression changed greatly. Old Man Ming Deng and the others must have come to Xueyu's birthday celebration for other reasons. He guessed that it was very likely that the experts behind them were here for the heaven and earth furnace in the hands of Purple Heaven's sacred grounds' old sect master. As expected, the mission this time isn't that simple. Now, I haven't even come into contact with Purple Heaven's sacred grounds' old sect master, and I've already met my old enemy. How unlucky. Zhuowen inwardly shook his head and thought that he was really unlucky. However, he wasn't afraid. Although he was still in Purple Heaven's sacred ground, he had a magical mount like the Chariot of Chariots. If he wanted to escape, no one could stop him. Thump, thump, thump. The clear and melodious footsteps came closer and closer, finally stopping not far in front of Zhuowen. Zhuowen looked up and happened to see Xueyu's frosty face. Xueyu stood in front of Zhuowen's table and looked down at Zhuowen. Behind him, Blood Beauty, Ding Jia, Ziyu, and the others quietly followed. "Brother, I don't seem to know you. Can you tell me your name?" Xueyu slowly opened his mouth, but his voice was bone-chilling. Ziyu was like an ant on a hot pan. His face was full of anxiety. He wanted to speak up for Zhuowen, but Blood Beauty beside him had used some unknown method to make his hands and feet and hands and feet and feet. To speak was extremely difficult. Zhuowen was as still as a mountain. He faintly said, "Brother Zio invited me. Does your banquet not allow guests to bring their friends and family?" Xueyu didn't say anything, but Ding Jia, who was standing at the side, snorted coldly and said, "Senior Brother Xueyu, actually, I've long suspected this kid. He has no power, no influence, and no background. Why does he have to be young Master Zio's brother? Now that I think about it, this person must have used some unspeakable method to force young Master Zio to be friends with him. As young Master Zio's friend, I feel the need to help young Master Zio." Zhuowen looked at Ding Jia coldly and said, "I'm talking to young Master Xueyu. Why are you interrupting?" Ding Jia's expression turned cold. He looked at Zhuowen coldly and said, "What did you say?" Just as Ding Jia was about to strike, Shuiyu lifted his sleeve to stop him. Shuiyu's gaze fell on Zhuowen again. He smiled and said in a low voice, "Zhuowen, I've heard people talk about you. Brother Zio went missing because he was kidnapped. The kidnapper's name is Zhuowen. I've also heard from Brother Ding Jia that you saved Brother Zio's life and brought him back to the Ziyu family. I'm curious. Both of them are called Zhuowen. One kidnapped Zio and the other saved him. Is there such a coincidence in this world? Or could it be that all of this is a farce that Brother Zhuowen directed and acted out yourself?" Shuiyu's body suddenly exploded with a terrifying and icy aura. It was as if countless mountains had fallen from the sky and pressed down on the ground. Instantly, the entire bustling hall was affected by this terrifying aura, and it instantly became absolutely silent. XDW ate one after another. Gazes involuntarily fell on Shuiyu, Zhuowen, and the others. The atmosphere also became exceptionally solemn. Zhuowen lifted his head gently. His gaze was as calm as water. He looked directly at Shuiyu and suddenly laughed. "What are you laughing at? Am I wrong?" Shuiyu frowned slightly. Seeing Zhuowen laugh, he was a little puzzled and a little angry. When he came to question Zhuowen, he originally wanted to see Zhuowen's panic-stricken appearance. However, Zhuowen's reaction was out of his expectations, and this made him extremely displeased. "I'm laughing at your stupidity. You don't even know that you're being used." Zhuowen spoke slowly. His tone was as sharp as a sword, piercing Shuiyu's heart. "Stupidity? Being used? How ridiculous!" Shuiyu sneered. He suddenly waved his sleeve and said, "Men, throw this miscellaneous person out." As soon as he said this, more than 10 people rushed in from outside the hall. They were all dressed in shining and colorful armor. They looked extraordinarily mighty and imposing. Clang! Clang! Numerous spears emitting cold light were mercilessly aimed at Zhuowen. "Now scram!" Shuiyu shouted disdainfully. Many people at the banquet had the mentality of watching a good show. When they saw Zhuowen being surrounded by Snow Moon Peak's guards and being scolded by Shuiyu, their eyes were filled with schadenfreude. At this moment, Shuiyu was filled with anger and only wanted to find a place to vent it. Seeing that Ding Jia had also offended Zhuowen, but did not receive the punishment he deserved, the anger in his heart burned even more. He simply vented his anger on Ding Jia. "Brother Shuiyu, you're being unreasonable. I didn't offend Zhuowen at all. It's you who offended him," Ding Jia hurriedly explained. As soon as he said that, Shuiyu was completely enraged. "Men, break Ding Jia's limbs first, then throw him into the dungeon of the Snow Moon Peak. I will personally report this matter to the enforcement elder," Shuiyu said coldly. More than 10 guards were originally hesitant, but when they heard Shuiyu's order, they all took action. Ding Jia's miserable screams could be heard as his limbs were quickly broken, and he was dragged away like a dead dog. The entire banquet was completely silent because of this incident. It was no longer as lively as before. Zhuowen silently followed Cho Yu and headed toward the main peak of the Purple Heaven Holy Ground, Divine Firmament Peak. They did not speak along the way. The two of them behaved very differently in the Snow Moon Hall. There was no sign of familiarity at all. The Divine Firmament Peak was much more magnificent than the Snow Moon Peak. The entire peak was surrounded by colorful clouds, which looked very beautiful and moving. Among these colorful clouds, streams of flowing light shuttled in and out like sharp arrows. It was very lively. Under Cho Yu's lead, Zhuowen could be said to be unimpeded in the Divine Firmament Peak. He did not encounter any obstacles at all. Soon, the two of them arrived at the peak of the Divine Firmament Peak. On the peak stood a huge ancient palace that had existed since ancient times. Around the ancient palace were terrifying waves of array formation, each of which had an aura that could destroy heaven and earth. There is no doubt that there were many extremely powerful array formations set up around the ancient palace. Choyu stopped in front of the ancient palace and took out the communication jade charm at his waist. After sending a message, he turned to look at Zhuowen. Zhuowen, you must be very confused. We have never met before. Why would I suddenly appear to help you? Choyu said indifferently. Zhuowen's expression was normal. He smiled faintly and said, if I'm not wrong, it should be the old sect master who sent you. Also, the reason why you swiftly captured the lamp elder and the other two was not to stand up for me. Choyu's eyes narrowed. He said with interest, if I'm not standing up for you, do you mean that I have a grudge against them? Your guess is not very accurate. Zhuowen said slowly. The three of them sneaked into the purple heaven's sacred ground with ulterior motives. You're just making an example out of them. Even if the three of them did not offend me, you would find a reason to punish them. If you can survive in this small world for a month, then I will acknowledge your strength. Zhuowen shook his head, causing Shun Yiji to frown. You're not willing? Shun Yiji said unhappily. No, what I mean is, a month is too long. I can't wait. Give me a day, and I'll bring you the heads of the 7 experts at the peak of the ancient defying starlight. Zhuowen said indifferently. Shun Yiji's gaze sharpened as he stared at Zhuowen and asked solemnly, are you serious? Of course. If I can't take the heads of those 7 experts in a day, I won't take the heaven and earth furnace. Zhuowen said calmly. Shun Yiji was silent for a moment. His eyes shone brightly as he stared at Zhuowen. Zhuowen also looked at Shun Yiji fearlessly. Good. No matter how strong you are, your courage is something I've never seen before. I'll give you this chance, and I hope you'll succeed. Shun Yiji suddenly shouted, and a deep smile appeared on his face. Zhuowen cupped his fist towards Shun Yiji and then stepped out with his right foot. Like a sharp arrow, he shot towards the opening in front of the throne. When Zhuowen's figure completely disappeared into the opening, Shun Yiji was still sitting on the throne. His right hand tapped the armrest, and the opening instantly closed. Killing 7 experts at the peak of the defying ancient starlight realm in a day? This kid is still too young and arrogant. Shun Yiji shook his head. He didn't need to look to know that Zhuowen's boasting was impossible to achieve. Not to mention Zhuowen's strength. Just the small world he had created was so vast that it wasn't any weaker than a high-level world. And the 7 experts at the peak of the defying ancient starlight were located in 7 different places. Some of them were even on the opposite edge of the defying ancient starlight. No matter how fast this kid was, it was impossible for him to travel to all 7 places in a day. I will open it again in a day. At that time, the expression on this kid's face will definitely be very interesting. Shun Yiji's faint voice reverberated throughout the inner palace.